Chapter 151. On the spot, Anson asked Hall to bring 2 family rings to Arthur and Molly. This is, Hall explained, Mr. and Mrs. Weasley. This is the ring of the Pendra family. It is not only the identity of the Pendra family, there are also some special functions that will be communicated to you later. Anson stood up. I wonder if Mr. Weasley is interested in the Alchemy Wizard Legion? Alchemy Wizard Legion? Arthur was a little confused. Well, it's those wizards under the magic tower, who specialize in alchemy and making magical items, and they can consult all the knowledge about alchemy that the Pendra family has. I intended for Mr. Weasley to lead their research. Molly carefully pulled down her husband's sleeves. Arthur was slightly urgent. May I? Rest assured, this position is only 647 to study alchemy, but it cannot pass on the technology. Understandable. I think I can. Good. So how about joining tomorrow? The magic tower has its special ability, which I think Sir will enjoy. Anson immediately added, as for the treatment, we will subsidize different degrees from both knowledge and gold gallon, and Hall will explain it clearly to Mr. when the time comes. If nothing else, there is absolutely no place where Anson's knowledge about alchemy can be compared. Even Nealchemy was stripped of things, plus what the family itself owned and looted from elsewhere. It can be called the alchemy encyclopedia in the wizarding world. Looking at what Quirrell has now, you can see a lot of things. His wealth is basically equal to that of a small family combined. Very superior. If a good alchemy product appears, maybe the Weasley family is even stronger than the Malfoy family. Hearing this, Arthur couldn't help but get a little excited. Malfoy. That smelly Malfoy. The thought that he could one day fart in front of Malfoy was not what he wanted, but man, you know, that tastes. Gee. The two left satisfied, and dang Bredo found that he seemed to be redundant. Even if I don't come, you don't seem to want to use force against them? Anson. Professor, you obviously don't know me well enough, and I am generally very kind to valuable people. What if it's worthless? Impossible. Even a piece of toilet paper should have its existence value. By the way, Professor, this is for you. Gaunt ring. But the Voldemort soul above has disappeared, so what to do with yourself now? Anson blinked. Make a memorial. Maybe you will collect all his Horcruxes. I don't think it's a good choice to give me a Horcrux a year. It's better like this. You tell me where the other Horcruxes are, I'll find them, and if you want them, you can take them. Very tempting. But what are the remaining Horcruxes? Nagini, the blood curse talk, has been following Voldemort, and the Slytherin locket is in the Black family's old mansion, and may be found soon. The Hufflepuff gold cup is in Bella's vault, which is not easy to take. Professor, fate is like this, it will appear on its own. Don't be in a hurry. Smiling old Deng also left. Next, Ron exaggerated. What do I see? My mom actually asked me to go to Anson. Ginny, what about you? Me too. Even George and Fred were the same, and almost all the children of the Weasley family were called away. Harry wrinkled his brows. Why? I don't know, but it should be fine. At night, the family arrived at the magic tower neatly. Ron opened his mouth exaggeratedly. It's beautiful. Arthur nodded. Indeed. No wizard seems to be able to resist the attraction that the magic tower brings, the strange aesthetic recognition. Inside, Filch was already waiting inside. Ah, gentlemen and ladies of Weasley, it's a pleasure to meet you. Filch. Fred was a little curious. Filch, who had ceased to be the gatekeeper of Hogwarts since he was cured by Anson, was now here. I heard that it has disappeared for a long time. Mr. Fred, everyone, please. I think Mr. Arthur has explained his intentions to you, so let's get started. Ginny raised her hand. Sir, I have already inscribed it. Yes, Gullum, I know. So how about Miss Ginny? Wait here first. Of course. Inscribe the dragon rules is complete. Closing parenthesis. The family was a little silent. No wonder so many people are willing to join the Pendra family. Just one inscription has been able to make them better than other wizards. Imagine that you have more mana than a wizard who hasn't inscribed rules, which means that your spell power will increase year on year. What did Filch say? The theoretical physical limit is the same as that of dragons, but ordinary wizards may take close to 10 years to grow to this point. But is this the problem? 10 years to change yourself to a body as powerful as a dragon. Would you like it? Father, do you work here? Ron asked curiously, and when he came in, he saw many wizards greeting his father. What is it called, Captain? Yes, that's the word. Molly looked at her husband's smug look. Yes, he specializes in alchemy in Mr. Pendra's magic tower, and you can also come in the future. She is confident in her child's talent. A few people just went back, and there seemed to be something more inexplicable in Ron, as if it was called courage. It doesn't matter what. At least it's not the same as before. Instead, Ron was thinking about when to ambush a wave of Wanda who had previously beaten him up. See, what? Are you going to ambush Wanda? Ron, are you crazy? Harry shouted exaggeratedly. Ron covered his mouth. Be quiet. I also inscribe the rules now. My strength must be greater than her, and she is only one person and we are two. The advantage is in me. 3.5. Harry, very seductive look. Ron put his arm around his shoulders. You just said whether to go or not. What if I don't beat you up in the future? Harry gritted his teeth. A corner where a certain little wizard needed to pass after class, and the two waited with bated breath. When you see Wanda appear, instantly, he jumped down from a high place and shouted, "Gryffindor!" No. Wanda held one in one hand. "Gryffindor, HMPH, actually learn from us." Ginny was a little amused. Tap. Ron, "Hey Ginny, I'm your brother." Ginny bent down and saluted. For the army of Coors." Harry muttered, "She's gone, and she won't save me." Chapter 152. During the meal, the little wizards saw several guys on the Gryffindor side with blue faces and swollen noses, so they were not miserable. "I didn't know, I thought they were going to fight with the trolls." Luna froze after listening to the secret whispers of the little wizards. "Ron, aren't they learning Wanda?" Every time Wanda punches someone, she yells a growing army, and when you get to Ron, you jump out of the corner and shout Gryffindor and get beaten. Really, a magical hobby. In the afternoon, defense against the dark arts class, Professor Lupin looked at the fist marks on Harry's face strangely. "Harry, you are?" "It's okay Professor, I just accidentally bumped into it while walking." "Well, yes. If you hadn't repeatedly emphasized that I would have believed me." Snap. The clap of his hand attracted the attention of the young wizards, and Lupin had an extra cabinet next to him today. From time to time, there were several collision sounds from inside. Apparently there were living creatures inside. Lupin, "Okay guys, today I brought you a friend 05. Does anyone know about Boggart?" Anson paused as he stood in the crowd. "Boggart? It's a very interesting magical animal." When he was studying transfiguration and human transfiguration, he also captured many Boggart for research, and what is certain is that this fantastic animal is excellent. It can detect the most feared things in wizards' hearts, and even transform into anything that wizards know. Anson had imagined that if he killed the Boggart, he would drop this magic rule that could be transformed at will. Is it possible to use it to deform at will? However, the truth is that until now, even if Anson's hands kill hundreds of Boggart, they have not dropped the relevant rules. It doesn't hinder Boggart's talent. According to Anson's understanding, Gert has at least two talents, similar to the natural Dementor and the natural transfiguration of animagos. Hermione raised her arms. "Hermione, Professor, Boggart is a natural shape-shifting magical animal. It is said that no one has really seen it as it really is, feeding on the fear of wizards." Lupin raised an eyebrow. "Very good, then Gryffindor plus a point for Hermione's erudition." Pick up your wand. With a click, the lock on the cabinet opened, and a black thing quickly came out of it, turning into a bright moon in the sky again in front of Professor Lupin. "Moon, or a full moon?" "Yes, Lupin is a werewolf, but he hates his werewolf identity. After all, he is infected by werewolves. It's normal to have some fear." Funny. In the next second, the full moon suddenly turned into a white balloon, flew into the air, wandered round, and entered the cabinet. Lupin opened his arm. "See? It's actually very simple to deal with Boggart, and read the spell with me again, which is funny. So who comes first?" Glancing at the little wizard, Lupin saw Anson standing behind, curious about what the magical Mr. Pendra would be afraid of. "Mr. Pendra?" Anson touched his nose. "Professor, how about you come first? Make a sample for your classmates." Shrugged. Of course. The long stick wand he was carrying with him stepped forward on the floor, and after Professor Lupin opened the compartment, everyone looked over curiously. "It's just that." "What is it?" Ron looked at him purely. "This is a purple-skinned troll." "It is indeed very similar to a troll, more than 2 meters, close to 3 meters, and a huge body. That skin color is not something that wizards can have. Anyway, they have not seen purple." Hermione shook her head. "No, it should be the descendants of trolls and wizards, maybe giants." Anson himself has seen such a scene more than once. To be honest, what he feared was not Thanos, but what Thanos would do. Thanos will take everything he cherishes is what Anson fears. Funny. In the next second, Thanos directly turned into an existence that surprised a group of young wizards. Voldemort. Although no one said it explicitly, the image knew who it was at a glance. A guy who has no nose, no face, and a face that will smile at a glance. Well, it does make them a little incomprehensible, and the Dark Lord, whom everyone fears, becomes the most funny person when he arrives at Anson. It can only be said that the joys and sorrows of people are not the same. Lupin nodded. "Very superb magic control. Mr. Pendra will definitely be an excellent wizard in the future." "Thank you, Professor." "So who's next?" "Neville." "Of course." Neville took a deep breath, and Boggart immediately became Snape. Well, the Snape that Boggart became was still a look like someone else owed him money. Until Neville uttered the spell, a Snape dressed in a grandmother's costume instantly hit the laughter of all the little wizards. Closing parenthesis. "Ha ha ha." Very good. So who's next?" "Harry." This time, Boggart turned into a Dementor, and the hapless child seems to have not yet come out of the nightmare of being sucked by Dementors when he entered school. But from the side, it can also prove that he now has no fear of Voldemort. It's a good thing. After school, Ron, Harry and the two left quickly. "They are?" "Hermione, they probably went to ambush Wanda. You know, Wanda should be out of class by now." Anson curiously followed. Seeing two unlucky children hiding around the corner, under the stairs, Wanda and Ginny walked up slowly, still talking about the harvest of this flying lesson 413. Ron and Harry jerked out. In order to Gryffindor. Yes, don't hiss. Anson gasped. His courage was commendable. The more defeated the war, the more courageous the battle. Delako, may Merlin bless them. If you say that a third grader can't beat a second grader, why are they still so interested? Hermione rolled her eyes. So you go? I'm not stupid. Wanda is obviously different from us. I mean, she is the same as us, but her abilities are not pure wizards, Anson, so to speak. Moreover, Wanda inscribed the rules of the dragon earlier than they did, theoretically. The strength possessed by the body is not comparable to that of Ron and Harry. Ginny stepped over Ron and Harry, who were lying on the ground, and bent over, for Gryffindor. When will you learn to behave? Luna shook her head directly. Courage can really harm little wizards. As for the people Wanda has long gone, 2 weak chickens. Night. Screaming in the shack. Whoosh. After a wolf howl, Professor Lupin suddenly turned into a werewolf. The next day, Anson's steps to walk to the classroom paused. Seems to have seen 2 Hermiones. That's right. Time Turner. Chapter 153. Anson, who was supposed to go to school, was no longer interested, and instead observed Hermione, who appeared in 2 places at the same time. The Time Turner gives holders the ability to rewind time, and through it, young wizards can take multiple courses to improve themselves. It is also considered to be an auxiliary magic item. But is it really so? This involves multiple paradoxes. Now that there are 2 Hermiones at the same time, which one is the real her? If one of Hermione dies, will the other Hermione also die? Or is it okay? Working through the time converter, is the time of the entire world going backwards, or is it just the user who has regressed time? However, there are not many time turners in the entire wizarding world, and they are all in the hands of the Ministry of Magic. According to the current perception of the time turner, wizards believe that its existence is extremely evil and easy to cause accidents. It can also be proved from here that the wizarding world is not as weak as it seems. At least they are now mastering part of the time power, and even controlling it. The only pity is that wizards are still too cautious. Of course, the power of time is great and elusive, and wizards are forgiven for fearing its power and not developing it vigorously. According to the current perception of the wizarding world, if one Hermione is trapped in another time, what will happen to the other Hermione? It's worth studying. If one is trapped and the other is fine, it is equivalent to saying that there is an extra Hermione out of thin air. Is it reasonable? This looks unreasonable. After thinking about it, Anson still found Professor McGonagall. So, you want a time turner too? Professor McGonagall looked at him solemnly. Anson nodded. Yes, Professor, if I can. I guess it shouldn't be difficult to apply for a time turner from the Ministry of Magic in my name. No, Anson, it's not a difficult question. I don't know what you want to do with it. But even using the time turner can't change what has already happened. Tilda. Anson's eyes lit up. So, the time turner is not mastering everyone's time, but its own? It's compressing. No, it should be predicting the user's time. No wonder Hermione would get older so quickly later, solving the case. Keen magical instincts, indeed, and using the time turner is complicated and dangerous, and many people get lost in their own time and can't get out. The result? McGonagall clasped her hands. Death. That's really dangerous. Seeing that McGonagall couldn't agree with him, she had to try it through Umbridge. Now that Minister of Magic Fudge is still working at the Leaky Cauldron, right? Poor people. However, Anson came to the room of requirement, which was what Anson only thought of when he saw Hermione use the time turner. Vanishing cabinet. Unlike the time turner, which controls time, the vanishing cabinet controls space. Do you still feel that the wizard's strength is weak? In fact, otherwise, the weak ones are just some outdated concepts of wizards, and if they let go of the study of the changes in the wizarding world, they would have turned upside down. The vanishing cabinet can make people appear intact from one vanishing cabinet to another, crossing the unknown distance. And in what way? In front of Anson stood an old cabinet, which at first glance looked like an ordinary cabinet, but it was the top work of wizards in space research. Vanishing cabinet. After collecting the king's sword, return to the magic tower. Arthur Weasley scratched his head after hearing Anson's words. Sir, the technology of making the vanishing cabinet has been lost. As far as I know, no one will make the vanishing cabinet. Maybe Nialame has a way, but Anson has snatched so many things from people's hands and has already made a bad deal. Quirrell just arrived from Pendra Manor, took out the bag engraved with a traceless stretching charm, and released another vanishing cabinet. Closing parenthesis. This was bought from the box store when he bought the black magic item in Overturned Alley, and it had been eaten in the Pendra Manor collection room. If it weren't for Anson's interest, no one would have thought of it. Young master, is there anything else you need? Thank you, Mr. Quirrell. You go first. Bend down and salute and leave. The 2 vanishing cabinets, apparently obtained from Hogwarts, were damaged, and in the original play, Delako repaired it so that the Death Eaters could enter the school and kill Old Deng. It means that the thing can be repaired. Mr. Arthur, why don't we try it? Sir, we can travel long distances through the door key, which is more convenient, faster and safer, and the vanishing cabinet is said to sometimes make people get lost inside. Arthur's face was full of worry. Merlin's hammer, If he had disappeared when he was still working at the ministry, it would have been a magical item to be confiscated. Too dangerous. Now Anson actually asked him to study together, but what was the matter? Why did it disappear? Well, I heard that wizards will feel a lot of spatial passages once they enter the vanishing cabinet, and if they can't find the right passage, they will get lost inside. Interesting statement. In other words, Anson can understand that the vanishing cabinet opens up a certain space in the world, and only by finding the passage of another vanishing cabinet can you leave those spaces. It is equivalent to saying that the space opened by the vanishing cabinet is public. So what does it have to do with the wizarding world? The two studied it carefully, and not much was gained. Anson frowned. Hall, let someone look for all the books they got from the Malfoy family from the family library, focusing on the vanishing cabinet. Hall disappears. 5 hours later, Hall came over with a thick piece of information. At first glance, it is indeed related to the vanishing cabinet, but there is still no production method, but the structure of the vanishing cabinet is recorded. After reading it, the restoration began according to the method recorded by the Malfoy family. Put an apple in it. A few seconds later, Anson opened another vanishing cabinet, and the apple did appear here, but the vanishing cabinet put in had no trace of the apple. Transfer. Space anchors. Put an animal in and see. Arthur's wand flicked, while the experimental mouse flew in, and the vanishing cabinet closed. A few seconds later, the mouse reappeared on the other side. Arthur was overjoyed. Sir, it seems that we have succeeded. No, Mr. Arthur, we just fixed it. I'm more curious about how it did it, and then I want you to test the distance it does. Of course, teleportation over distances is extremely important no matter what world it is in, especially when Anson still has such a large industry to manage, and wants to plot Europa. Chapter 155 In the Magic Tower. Hela is still playing with COO. Anson listened to Quirrell report on the recent situation in the wizarding world, because last time Anson robbed Nialame of alchemy. Voldemort sees the opportunity to win over the wizards in Romancy. It seems that he intends to attack the local wizarding world in the near future. It wasn't this that Anson cared about, but a letter Quirrell had recently discovered. Was it delivered directly to Pendra Manor? Yes, young master. Look at the logo above is the Rosier family on the French side, but the logo in the envelope is different. It is the three hallows. To be precise, is the symbol of the witch party. Between the lines, it's nothing more than saying something about wanting to work with Anson. It seems that Voldemort has given them a lot of power. Quirrell smiled. After all, no matter how much faith there is, they can't withstand Voldemort's killing all the time. Frightened. Once the older generation of the witch party leaves, most of the younger generation of the witch party does not necessarily have the same faith as the older generation. They want to exchange. Evan, Rosier, what do you think? Young master, could this be a trap? Evan and Rosier have attacked us more than once, and it is too coincidental that the Rosier family on the French side wants to exchange now. My idea is to see first, and now they are just sending a letter to prove that they still have some strength to resist. Quirrell meant to watch the wizards crippled by Voldemort. In this way, they can really receive everything from the witch party. The only difficulty is how to control the degree here. If the witch party is beaten too badly, it will not be of much value to Anson. But if he kept too much power, it would not be good for him. Just do as you say. By the way, how is the time turner thing? Quirrell was a little embarrassed. Umbridge said that there is no extra time turner left, and the latest time turner rare space time has reached 3 months later. Can only wait. What about the Department of Mysteries of the Ministry of Magic that brought her attention? Found something interesting, but it's hard for her to get close to, and it's mostly up to Rita to check. Well, try to find out. In class, it is rare that today's defense against the dark arts class is not Professor Lupin, but Professor Snape. A wand pointed to the sky, and wherever he walked, the window would automatically close. Superb spell mastery. The silent spell is used to the extreme, and the effect looks very good. Turn on the projector. Turn the textbook backwards. 364. Hermione raised her hand. But Professor, we haven't learned here this year. Gryffindor deducts 1 point. Delako also frowned when he looked at the textbook. Werewolf? Does this thing still have to learn how to fight it? It seems that most of the werewolves have been killed by Anson. The rest either fled overseas or hid in the gutter. Where would they dare to operate in the wizarding world? They didn't know that there was a werewolf in the school right now. There was a slight smile on the corner of Snape's mouth. Anson, tell me about the characteristics of werewolves. Professor, am I suitable? I don't think anyone knows werewolves better than you do, Snape said. Anson was helpless. Werewolves, human-like wizards, will involuntarily transform into werewolves when the moon is full, and anyone who is bitten by a werewolf in this state will be infected with the werewolf virus. Moreover, this virus will be passed on to the next generation. The advantage is that it has a certain magic resistance, is fast, the self-healing effect is good, and the strength is comparable to that of wizards. The disadvantage is that werewolves are afraid of silver objects, and in terms of spells, there are many spells that can fight werewolves, that is, death curses such as unforgivable curses, etc. Other spells have a certain effect as long as they are used properly, but if they are encountered by a little wizard, it is best to take out a flying broom and fly into the air. Werewolves can't fly, remember. Harry, but Anson, what if we don't have the unforgiveness curse or a flying broomstick? Transfiguration. Transfiguration? The little wizards were a little confused. Transfiguration can deal with werewolves? There was a kind of wisdom in Ron's clear eyes that had not been tainted by knowledge. Anson eloquent. As I just said, werewolves can also add a weakness, that is, they basically have no intelligence when they transform. Of course, the premise is to see whether he has drunk wolf poison. As for the effect of wolf poison, you can consult the professor, he is an expert. Speaking of the method of werewolves, since werewolves have no wisdom when they transform, then we can actually do a lot of things through transfiguration. For example, the spell of rapid growth can give birth to plant growth in jungles, mountains and even many scenes in a short time. Through the transfiguration spell, as long as you don't panic, you can completely trap the werewolf. Linton added, however, I still recommend using the death spell directly, which is the cleanest and most direct. Snape tapped on the tabletop. Well, Mr. Pendra, if I'm not mistaken, it seems that the Ministry of Magic has long ruled that the unforgivable charm should not be used casually, especially small wizards. Of course, Professor, after all, we are all people who keep to ourselves. The corners of the mouth tugged. Nasty little ghost. It is said that because Anson hunted and killed werewolves, the native werewolves could escape and hide. The wolf poison potions he made were a little unsellable. Snape, wolf poison potion is not selling, who will help me? Woohoo. Enamellance. Within the Rosier family, Vader's old body was still wearing that dark green clothes, and she looked at a few people who were about the same age as her in front of her with some emotion. How long has it been since the adults left? Vader, it's been decades. Yes, for decades. Now the entire Europa region is being destroyed by that group of madmen like Death Eaters, and even our people have lost a lot. He seems to be deliberately dealing with us. Vader was silent. Closing parenthesis. Everyone's inheritors have been arranged, right? So what do you think of the last time we talked about it? Are you really going to work with that little guy? That's what adults mean. Grindelwald did not leave them with any instructions, but rather planned a perfect future for them. That is to join Anson directly. Why? Grindelwald didn't say it explicitly. He just said that this is the future. Vader is Grindelwald's most loyal follower, and he sees everyone in this room. Let the wizard be great again. This phrase is now widely spread in the Europa region, and I have reason to believe that someone is secretly leading all this. Is he? It should be. What adults can't do, he has the ability to do. Vader, at least, he has no enemies in this day and age. The crowd was dumbfounded. Chapter 156. A month later, Anson receives a notification from Arthur, and the method of making the vanishing cabinet is reversed by them. By dismantling the two intact vanishing cabinets, the Alchemy Wizard Legion finally developed its production method, thanks to the complete alchemy obtained by Anson. In the knowledge that Nia Lane pulled out, there was a part about the production of the vanishing cabinet, and the rest of the sewing was finally understood. Anson looked at a cabinet in front of him that was more ornate and larger than the original vanishing cabinet. It can only look like a cabinet? Arthur smiled and shook his head. No, in fact it can be made in various styles. Through the kind of magic rules given by Mr. Pendra, we refer to a lot of rune-even constructs. Finally, I studied and understood its specific mechanism. Are there any drawbacks? Tested it? It has been tested by 743, and it has the same effect as the original vanishing cabinet, and it is more stable. Then there was a pause. But we still need to improve it through moles, but we're confident that this will be solved. Anson nodded. Mr. Quirrell, young master, reward all wizards involved in the research with 10,000 gold gallons. Mr. Weasley 30,000 gold gallons, and the relevant rewards you follow up. Understood. The wizards waiting around were momentarily short of breath. Working well under the Pendra family estate has become the consensus of local wizards. Even those overseas squibs who later changed from squibs to wizards also greatly improved their status and lives after joining. It can be said that the Pand family can achieve everything they have. On the magic tower, Anson personally poured tea for Arthur. Sir, I don't know if it's the Mr. Weasley. I wonder if you came into contact with the people who built the Flu network when you worked at the Ministry of Magic? Weasley instantly understood what Anson meant. Sir, the Flunet and the Little Wizard's Trace are the most core secrets of the Ministry of Magic. I can't reach them. Does Sir suspect that they also use the same technology as the Vanishing Cabinet? Have to doubt. Dalkies can be transmitted across distances, but are one way, with a fixed destination. The Flunet can access the various fireplaces through the fireplace, but it requires the magic material Flu powder, and the construction of the Flunet is only available to the Ministry of Magic. Moreover, it seems that only the native wizarding world has been built. In other words, this is the arrangement of the local area network. After all, the overseas wizarding community must also guard against wizards in other places. Unless the global wizarding community is unified, the construction of a global Flu network is unlikely. But according to Anson's ideas, the Ministry of Magic, or the Ministry of Magic of the global wizarding world, should have mastered the kind of space he found through the vanishing cabinet. But their grasp should be safer than what Anson found. After all, I haven't heard of anyone using a port-core flu network to get into danger. What do you think? Arthur paused and nodded. This is the only possibility. Flu network aside, there is only one company producing flu powder. I suspect that this is also the property of the Ministry of Magic. Sorry, I can't help. Many wizards have tried the analysis of flu powder, but it was not successful. Anson nodded. Since the local area is a little difficult, then go overseas to do it. For example, the current Inomixian Ministry of Magic has been crippled by the Death Eaters. In name only. It's not too much to give them some salvage technical protection, right? Quirrell immediately arranged the manpower. How to say that now that Valentia is also the territory of the Death Eaters, and it has been completely mastered by Voldemort over there, it is good to be prepared. Come through the door key. Hela hugged and cooed. Grab it directly. No, don't make too much noise. We can't steal the limelight from the Death Eaters now. Has Mr. Quirrell found the target? Yes, young master. The main personnel of the original Flu Network administration of the French Ministry of Magic have been found, and the Second Wizard Legion has left. Half an hour later, dozens of wizards were brought back. None of them slipped through the net. Who the hell are you? What do you want to do? Yes, let us go. The Minister of Magic will not have a chance to leave once he finds out. Hey? Anson raised his eyebrows. Are you talking about Voldemort? How dare you call your master by name? Bang! A green light was fired directly from the wand in Quirrell's hand. SHH. Closing parenthesis. The smell of curses on Quirrell is getting stronger. Even the power of casting the death spell has reached this level, and the unicorn's curse is very weird. Let's get started. Spit the magic potion down. There are a lot of records in the air, but when it comes to the key place, it seems that I can't say anything. Unbreakable oath. Scold. Quirrell frowned. Young master, what should I do? If the core technology has an unbreakable oath, we may not get what we want. Who said that? It is naturally impossible to live when you live, but if you die, you can't control the soul of a wizard if you can't break your vow. However, it is best not to use black magic. So, falling apart, Hela licked her lips and pretended to be afraid. So bloody, so terrifying. Sparse. Anson released the resurrection stone from the sword of the king, thinking about the wizard just now, and the next second what scared everyone happened. The souls of those who should have died float here. It seems impossible to leave. Anson walked up to him. How about making a deal? If the soul dissipates again in my cognition, it will directly dissipate, but if you trade with me, your soul may have another way to survive. Hugh. Anson shrugged. He also blew up people. It is normal for people not to cooperate. However, this is not up to you. Hela said that there is a unique death rule on the resurrection stone, which is, to put it bluntly, the magic rule for souls. Like now, with the resurrection stone, he can even control the souls that 4.7 produce after the death of these people. At the same time, the outside world, outside the village, there were already dense black wizards, and there was basically a skull inscribed on the left arm, turning from time to time. If it were an English wizard who saw the iron, he would have blurted out, Death Eater. A passage appeared in the wizard group, and the bald-headed Voldemort walked in. Master, make sure the person is inside. Hey, this guy finally got me caught. So what are you waiting for? All the Death Eaters pointed their wands at the village. In unison. Falling apart. Thunderbolt explosion. Raging fire. Milky snow. Except for your weapons, the light generated by countless spells instantly covered the entire village, and if it was solid, it was no less than a saturation missile strike. Chapter 157. Bang bang. The violent explosion was directly blocked by a layer of transparent and visible energy on the top of the village, and no spell broke through it and entered. The Death Eaters were stunned. Protective charm? Moreover, it is an extremely powerful protective spell, even cast by multiple wizards together. Master? Barty Jr. was a little impatient. Master, we can't let go of this opportunity. Once he returns to the mainland, it will be too difficult for us to catch him. Merlin's drunken Fenbayar. Do you know how many wizards there are under the Pendra family? Tens. This is still a conservative estimate. Voldemort's black nails scratched his bald head. The whole person walked back and forth maniacally, and the wand in his hand was pinched by him. Especially when he saw the eyes of the Death Eaters, the mania was even more unbearable. Why are all my subordinates such goods that see the wind and rudder? That little ghost's person can work for him in all kinds of ways. In Nelancy, even in the entire Europa region, they had captured many wizards of the Pendra family, but none of them were willing to betray them. When did those cowards who in his eyes could be deterred by force and death become so courageous? He was puzzled. Fiercely raised the magic 10 staff. A thick ray of light hit the shield outside the village. Boom. The power of one person is even more terrifying than 1,000 wizards above. Anson happened to walk out of the house. Hela pursed her lips. It's really interesting, if you look at it like this. This guy's strength is no less than that of many Asgardians. If it is to use the kind of death curse mentioned by Anson is unforgivable or something, I am afraid that she should also be careful under the soul. Yes. The defensive spell dissipated little by little, turning into golden threads dripping on the ground and disappearing, They were all composed of pure magical power. Turn your head to look at the hillside. The appearance of Voldemort's bald head is extremely obvious. The two are like seeing each other across space, hot and expectant. Voldemort waved his hand. The Death Eaters behind him screamed like hyenas and jackals. Some flew, others used phantom transfiguration, and even rode flying broomsticks. Wizards, not everyone is equally strong. Even if the students in Hogwarts receive the same education and the same resources, they all grow up in different states. Uneven. Just like now. On the other hand, on Anson's side, although the Second Wizard Legion has only been established for less than a year, most of them are still modified from the original squibs. But these people are somehow more desperate than normal wizards, and they crave any opportunity to cast and use magic. Moreover, there are inscribed dragon rules and dragon skin magic robes. They are not at all agreed with each other, and if I have to say an analogy, it is a torrent of steel. Do you have an idea? Hela came up. Anson did have an idea. Make a wave. Quirrell's body trembled when he heard this. That the Second Wizard Legion obeyed the order and killed all the Death Eaters. The image of a gentleman who used to be an industrial activity in Pendra exudes a kind of malice. He suffered Voldemort for a long time. Are you interested in trying it? Hela shoved the COO into Anson's hand, flicked both hands to the side, and two pitch-black swords of the night condensed by her divine power appeared. Anson looked over. Didn't you say that your divine power was sealed? Hela, that's right, but you can still throw it away. Scold. The legs were spinning, and they appeared in front of the two armies a few points faster than the speed of the Second Wizard Legion. Swish, rip and pull. Wherever two long swords passed, the wizards basically did not survive a move. Unique abilities. It is better to say that the iron armor spell that the Death Eaters had already arranged in the Dark Night. It is better to say that Hela forcibly stabbed into the iron armor spell with brute force. It is a compulsion to move through the clouds. Avada nibbles on a big melon. 4. The spell hit Quirrell's body was directly bounced to the side by the dragon skin magic robe with vibranium added, and when he raised his hand, a magic spell shattered the wizard in front of him. The blood has not yet fallen. With a flick of the wand, all the blood seemed to have frozen in the air. His eyes were red, and a crazy meaning filled Quirrell's brain. Novels. Just go to Felu closing parenthesis falling apart, falling apart. Drill heart curse, drill heart curse, drill heart curse. All the wizards who are hit by the drill curse. Quirrell went up and gave another sword, and this configuration is the norm in the entire Second Wizard Legion, with one hand of physical attack and the other hand of magic attack. The one that plays is called a 6. It's not good. Our dragon skin magic robes don't seem to be able to resist them. Barty Jr. turned pale and returned to Voldemort. Master, their dragon skin magic robes are stronger than our defenses, and most spells are like tickling. What to do? Even weirder yet, they haven't found it yet. If it weren't for the chaos of the battlefield, maybe they would have found that all the Death Eaters who had used the spell would have no defense at all in the dragon skin magic robes they wore. The Pendra family ring was arranged by Anson with a backdoor, that is, friend or foe identification. Any wizard who attacks a wizard with a family ring will invalidate all family-generated magic items on his body. These Death Eaters thought it was just that the Second Wizard Legion was too powerful. Motley army. This should not be Voldemort's elite. What to do? Voldemort was unwilling to let Anson go, and naturally it was impossible to leave like this. The figure turned into a black shadow and flew towards Anson in the village, and the battlefield. Hela couldn't help but sigh a little when he saw this scene. How much hatred does this guy have for Anson? Even the strength of the enemy and ourselves is reckless. Anson looked up, and raising his hand was a spell. Except for your weapons, 2 rays of light, one red and one green, crashed into the air. 183 boom. Gas burst generation. The house closest to the two was directly flown out, and the roof fell not far away with the sound of ping-pong. Voldemort's face became more solemn. Stronger than when I first met him. Even if you eat dragon meat every day, it won't be so terrifying, right? A flick of the wand. After the light disappeared, the two looked at each other at the same time. Still fighting? Voldemort, you're proud. Pendra, we're not necessarily enemies. Even if I destroyed so many of your Horcruxes. Breathing stagnantly, Anson spread out his hands. Look, this can't be negotiated, but we can make a deal. Tell me about it. If you mess around in Europa, don't go to the mainland, otherwise you won't be able to deal with a single me, let alone add a professor. I'm for your own good, Anson said bitterly. Voldemort, however, felt that he was mocking himself. Avada nibbles on a big melon. Except for your weapons. Once again, the spell did not make a contribution, and this time Voldemort did not insist and left with a group of Death Eaters who had been killed by most of the half. Leave a field of corpses. Hela twisted her cat and walked over. It seems that you succeeded in shocking him. Well, showing some power at the right time will make the Europa region more chaotic, and the wizards of this place will be more receptive to my arrival. Chapter 158. The battle between the Death Eaters and the Second Wizard Legion did not cause much ripple in Europa. After all, it is impossible for Voldemort to publicize such a defeat. Anson is even more unlikely. He will also deliberately let people publicize the strength of Voldemort, Only one Voldemort who is strong enough to crush all wizards in Europa is a Voldemort who is useful to Anson. Return to the magic tower. All the wizarding alchemy legions worked together on the technology about the flu network that they had taken back from the Ministry of Magic of Elancy. Arthur, they did master this method as we thought. But it seemed different from the alchemy we found on the Vanishing Cabinet. Anson nodded. At least his speculation was correct. The methods used by the Ministry of Magic are indeed similar to those of the Vanishing Cabinet, but most of them are different, except that they study them more deeply. It's also subtle. Vanishing Cabinets are more primitive. In principle, flu can teleport from one fireplace to any other, even the fireplace of a mole family. However, you need to open the permission of flu network. Since it is a network, there is a foundation for building a network. Flu also relies on pre-existing spaces in nature to anchor fireplaces with a specific technology. Flu powder is the key item to start the two spaces, providing both the activation energy and the key to open. Mr. Weasley, you see that this spell and these rune arrangements should be the reason why they stabilize wizards to carry out physical shuttles. As soon as possible, we need to build our own transportation network. Understand? Just sir. Then you can go directly to the opposite side of all the Ministry of Magic. Slightly worried, Anson smiled. It's okay, you just do it. Whether the Ministry of Magic in the wizarding world will exist in the future is an unknown thing, and according to Anson's own ideas, the Ministry of Magic should exist. But the surname should be Pendra. There will be no exceptions. Nor could he tolerate exceptions. How many people did we lose last time? Quirrell shook his head. In fact, we have not lost wizards. The new dragon skin magic robe is extremely good, and it can already withstand most of the spells. Even the death-seeking charm can be partially neutralized, depending of course on who is using the death-seeking charm. Letting Quirrell wear a few dragon skin magic robes to face Voldemort's death curse head-on is probably a cool ending, and the average wizard can ignore it. Speed up the addition of vibranium. The new dragon skin magic robe does not flow out. The loss of any one will affect us. I understand. How many magic robes have the Pure Blood family sold overseas? So far, we have sold them close to 50,000 pieces, and in addition to their own use, there should be about 30,000 overseas, mostly in the hands of Death Eaters. Very good. He could already imagine what it would be like when the Death Eaters actually face the wizards of the Upper Pendra family. Once the dragon skin magic robes that they rely on for survival fail, their faces should look good, right? Enamel Ministry of Magic. Voldemort sat in the position of Minister of Magic, and below were all Death Eaters. Even some unimportant positions were basically divided among the Death Eaters. Originally, the people of the Ministry of Magic had either surrendered or died. Now Voldemort exuded a strong killing aura. We continue to recruit. We need more people. Master, the wizards who are willing to join us have already joined, and most of the wizards who are not willing to join are pure blood families. The implication is that those people have a lot of power. Voldemort sneered, a group of people who only see immediate benefits. Of course, I am willing to give them benefits to be considered to have interests. If you don't cooperate, leave it to you, and you can dispose of those family properties. What I want is a shock of life and death, understand? The Death Eaters looked at each other with excitement when they heard this, and they had been waiting for a long time. Little Barty frowned. Master, will this cause a direct conflict between us and the Pureblood family in the Europa region? Even if they only pick some Thorn family calamities, it is impossible for other families not to see the meaning of what is represented. Once some rules are broken, the impact is enormous. I don't want to say a second time. Yes. Any suggestions? I think it's most appropriate to start with the Rosier family, which has risen since the time of Grindelwald, and now even Grindelwald has died. A lot of purer blood families are watching them act. Once the Rosier family is defeated, it is a huge boost to the reputation of the Master, and they have been fighting against us, and the strength of the Witch Party is still good. Witch Party? Closing parenthesis. It's just a bunch of outdated clowns. The times are theirs. So what are you waiting for? The Rosier family estate is on the outskirts. In the dark night, not many animals were willing to come out and move, and there was silence, and the silence invisibly revealed a feeling of coldness. Two wizards in the manor stood in the doorway rubbing their hands. This damn weather. I heard that some things have been transferred in the family recently. I don't know. Shout. Bang. The head of the wizard who was still talking to him just now shattered in front of his eyes. Turning his head, a group of black-robed wizards in the distance were rapidly approaching, not wanting to raise their wands and shoot a red ball of light into the air. Bang. A loud sound reverberated throughout the manor, illuminating the manor and its vicinity. Enemy attack. Half an hour later. Mr. Crouch. The wizards in Rosier Manor have all been solved, but little Barty was still thinking about how he would be praised by his master after this evening, and said happily, "What's wrong?" The number of wizards in the manor is small, and most of the things in the Rosier family seem to have been transferred. The face showed a stunned look. Zhao Wang Zhao. How is that possible? Our actions are top secret and they cannot have known in advance. But people just aren't right. HMPH, it seems that they have already prepared, but it is right to fear the master. Continue to the next family, and the feast of tonight belongs to us. After dawn, the wizards throughout France began to exchange news, which family had disappeared, and everyone was dead. A black storm pressed across the heads of all the wizards of Elancy. Look, the latest news from the Ministry of Magic says that all wizards need to join the ministry, otherwise they will be considered rebellious and kill Draco. Hiss. What does he want to do? Kill all wizards? SHH. Whisper you to death? The wizard stopped his companion's voice. Now 1 out of 3 of the Lanchan wizards is a Death Eater, and the trend is spreading throughout Europa. Chapter 159. Most of the dead man's family were members of the Witch Party, and this hatred could not be suppressed at once. Because of Grindelwald's relationship, the soul of the Witch Party was killed by Voldemort for a long time. If it were not for the older generation of people suppressed it, the Witch Party had already launched a massive attack on the Death Eaters. Death Eaters are unscrupulous, and the Witch Party is not weak, and to some extent, the Witch Party is the real madman. Now that many members have died without cause and been killed by Death Eaters, the new generation of witchcraft has shown signs that they no longer want to listen to the older generation. So, the Death Eaters received a thump. The pulp also experienced its first large-scale attrition. How many of our people came? More than 500. Well, enough. The older generation is not willing to continue to kill, and some sacrifices need to be made for the greater good. Our people can't just die like this. We have to tell that the noseless and faceless man Europa is not a place where he can mess around in the country. Everyone's hearts are hot. It is not for honor, but for their great goal as descendants of the Witch Party. At least they 333 themselves think so. The Ministry of Magic could now be renamed the Death Eater Headquarters, but it was still openly called the Ministry of Magic. People Voldemort still wants to face. He even applied to Orem and Maxim, the headmaster of the Magic School of Refute and Wizardry, to be a professor in defense against the dark arts. Say it's an application, it's probably just a notice passed. But Principal Maxim just didn't dare to speak. She is a half-blood giant, and wizards like her are of little value in Voldemort's philosophy and need to be cleaned up. It can be seen how powerful Voldemort is in the Europa region. During the day, everyone watched. A group of wizards pretending to be normal wizards entered the ministry, and the Death Eaters at the door glanced at it and didn't pay much attention. These days, many wizards from pureblood families will come to register to join the Death Eaters, and it is not surprising that a large number of people appear. However, what caught them off guard was that these wizards all raised their wands as soon as they entered the ministry. For the greater good, the leading wizard shouted, and the spell had hit a Death Eater and fell to the ground. For the greater good, shout, shout, shout. The various colors of light represent countless spells. In an instant, the stunned Death Eaters and innocent wizards were stunned, and all the people of the Witch Party took over the place in the first place. However, they have not yet finished their excitement. The Death Eaters upstairs at the Ministry of Magic had reacted and appeared shouting and cursing. A big war. Pity the wizards who died here innocently. Damage to Pondfish also. The witches don't care about that. You come here and they identify as Death Eaters, and silence and follow-up in the midst of great change is often more hateful than evil. The Death Eaters didn't care. Avada nibbles on a big melon, falling apart. Except for your weapons, Little Barty is like a god of war, and every time he swings his wand, a Witch Party member dies under the spell. Walk gracefully in the battlefield. Except for putting an iron armor spell on yourself, don't care. The rest of the Death Eaters were even more frantic when they saw this scene. Countless people sprang up from everywhere and directly surrounded the Witch Party that had entered the Ministry of Magic. Damn. What to do? The leading wizard wrinkled his eyebrows, and suddenly laughed. Guys, isn't that what we're after? Others are afraid of him as a Death Eater, but we are not afraid. Since you can't leave, then just let them see what it is. Witch Party. The remaining wizards who were still alive looked at each other and saw the madness in their eyes. If you want to say what spell the Lanchan wizard is most afraid of, it is not the death-seeking curse, but Fire Curse. The original Grindelwald Fire Curse variant almost destroyed the entire Wallency. If it weren't for the appearance of Neolame that prevented the disaster, perhaps the city has become an empty city. Now, see who else will save you. Fire Curse. Fire Curse. Fire Curse. Closing parenthesis 500 wizards when they came. Now there are only more than 200, which is indeed miserable. But the next situation directly made the Death Eaters stunned. With what spell did they need to burn themselves first? Fire Curse? Not good. Fire Curse. Quick. The fire instantly burned all the remaining wizards, and immediately followed, as if the fire had been filled with spirits. The powerful flames turned into a huge phoenix in the air, flapping its wings. Tweet. Crow. It is the whisper of death. It is the last madness of these witch parties. Little Barty Phantom moved to a high place to look at the rapidly rising fire spell below. Too big, and too fast. At this level, as long as the fire charm continues to exist for less than a minute, the entire Ministry of Magic will be burned, and it will spread. At that time, the whole city will cease to exist. Maniacs. All maniacs. Arrange all spells, everyone, quickly. On the top floor of the Ministry of Magic, Voldemort picked up his wand and disappeared, and the next second appeared outside the Ministry of Magic building, watching the fire spell inside lose control. "Huh," sneered. "Crazy. Is there a wilder wizard than him? A little fire spell." Little Barty ran out with a group of wizards in embarrassment, swallowing saliva with a hard throat. "Master, the fire curse is out of control." Voldemort waved his hand gracefully. The magic wand in his hand plunged into the ground. "One, curse, all, end." The huge magic power formed a barrier to block the phoenix formed by the fire curse, until the phoenix magic condensed by the fire curse dissipated completely. Voldemort let out a vague sigh. However, the Ministry of Magic was burned down. "The face is gloomy." "Check, find out all the wizards associated with the witch party, no matter who it is, control it, and kill all those who can't." Icy words are like winter sun, the kind of face that smiles but has no temperature. And Anson, who was far away in England, almost didn't laugh when he saw the news. "So wow, Quirrell, young master, at present, a large number of wizards from overseas enter the mainland every day, and according to our clues, there are quite a few witch parties among them." "Control? This kind of thing is unavoidable, and we need a new blood infusion. Besides, it's not us who should be in a hurry now. The 500 wizards are a new generation, which means that they still have countless networks and relatives and friends behind them." The war between the Death Eaters and the witch party was brought to the table. The real killing has only just begun. Chapter 160, Start the Story of the Old Bat. In the evening, after class, Snape called Anson to his office. It was still the same as before, and Professor Snape's office was either potions or potion materials. While a transparent bottle was placed on the table, and the old bat motioned for him to take it. "Professor, what does that mean?" "Elixir. If you put it outside, it should be very valuable, or the kind that has a price, no market." Anson played. "But he is not much interested in the elixir. It can indeed make the user bless the spirit, but after the effect of the drug is over, it will also make people unlucky for a period of time. What is gained, there is something to lose. Some of the magic in the wizarding world still follows this rule." Snape opened his mouth and thought for a while. "Anson, I have a question for you. What do you think will be the emotion that supports a person the longest?" "I asked Professor Dumbledore and he said it was love." Anson raised his eyebrows and looked at the existence that had been misunderstood by the little wizards. "What is the professor's answer?" "I don't know. That's why I asked you." "So the elixir is a bargaining chip." "What a luxury." "Enough, you nasty little wizard. I didn't ask you to come to tease me. Hurry up, I've already paid me." Anson shrugged. "No jokes can be made. It seems that you are very concerned about what you want to talk about." "Professor, it's hatred." "Hate?" Snape's face was stunned. He hadn't thought Anson would give him this answer. "Shouldn't we talk about love and devotion like Dumbledore?" "It is true that love is beautiful and fascinating, but only hatred can make a person worry about one thing day and night, a person. Many people think hate is ugly, but what about hate? And what about those who inflict hatred?" Anson spread out his hand. "Can't you say sorry to me after you did something wrong? I still have to say hello to you, right? Just like the professor." "You." Snape stood solemnly in his chair, his hands hidden under his magic robes already clasped together. Two eyes glanced at Anson. "Are you luring me?" Anson smiled. "Praise your wisdom. However, you can embrace beauty, embrace the future and be relieved, and choose the person who made you miserable, which requires a great mind." "But are you a great man, Professor?" Snape was silent. Anson's small eyes slipped. "Did the professor see who?" "Scream Shack. I saw some." "The person I don't want to see, Anson, you know, I can totally give him a life spell." Snape franticed. "Yes, I should have given him a life spell, all of them, but I can't do it." As he spoke, he seemed to be in deep thought again. "There is sadness, there is pain, but more is unspeakable. Struggle." "My dear Professor, you really want to give that person a life spell? And maybe I will give you a life spell too." If he really did, it meant that Snape's weakness would disappear. Maniacs are not terrible, they are paranoid. This is both a strength and a weakness. It just so happened that Snape was this kind of paranoid madman and a genius. "Professor, do you have any friends?" Anson said such a sentence for no reason. "Snape, do you want to laugh at me?" "Of course not. What I want to say is that we have already had a deal, and the person you want to resurrect can be completely resurrected, and I am very confident. The question is, after the resurrection, Professor, this is your life. What does this have to do with what I asked you today?" Anson shook his head. "It's okay, I just want the professor to think about it a little." "Why did you fail in the first place, and if you resurrected her, are you sure she will still choose you?" After all, people had already given up on him once. Human values don't make the same person's behavior make different choices in a short period of time, so how can Snape guarantee that he will get what he wants? In other words, does it make sense for him? If it doesn't make sense, then why is he doing it? Snape was silent again. For a long time, look up. The eyes were already red. "Ah, pitiful old bat. So why do I keep insisting on it?" "Maybe it's a pity, Professor, you don't necessarily really love her." "Everyone has regrets, and I am no exception, even if it is as strong as Professor Dumbledore. The only difference is that I gave you a chance to make up for it." "The eyes are like poisonous snakes spitting letters?" Anson yawned juices. "Professor, you see, It's great that her love kept Harry alive to this point, and if you are love, let's count it as love. 0 for flowers 0. Snape was furious. Enough, what the hell are you trying to say? Anson, ecstasy, snatching curse, and forgetting to modify your memories can completely get what you want, so why bother yourself? I'm not a cattle. Anson smiled. Ah, yes, everyone says that, it's just to call their actions civilized. Looks like you didn't get the answer I was looking for. Professor, did you see Sirius? I heard that there is always a black dog roaming around the school recently. So this black dog bullied you in the first place? How about I go to give him a gazette? Snape pointed to the door. You're the dog, right? Get lost. Okay. Professor Chan, smiling and walking out, leaving Snape alone to smash inside. The love of the elderly is really terrifying. Screaming shack. Professor Lupin, who had drunk the wolf poison, had turned into a werewolf, but next to him stood an Azkaban fugitive wanted by the Ministry. Sirius, Black. So, you picked up the Marauder's map by accident? The werewolf nodded. Sirius frowned. It's impossible. This thing is said to have reached the hands of that kid in Pendra. How can you pick it up? Moreover, through the Marauder's map, they coincidentally found the person they had been looking for, Peter Pettigrew, the man who revealed the residence of Harry's parents to Voldemort, who had been friend. Now they even have to resort to the help of the people they used to bully. Snape. Gotta find a way to trick Peter here. The werewolf shook his head. I know, he's always been with that Weasley kid. Does Snape have a way? The werewolf shook his head again. All right. Did Snape know I showed up? The werewolf paused and shook his head. Sirius breathed a sigh of relief. To be honest, he didn't really want to see Snape. And in the corner where the two did not know, the beetle was squatting all the time, and there was a magic camera next to it. Anson decided to give Snape, the innocent old bat, a gift. In the name of love. Praise all bitter loves that cannot be loved. Reader, what? You're craving Snape's potions technique. Chapter 161. The next day, it was Snape's office, which seemed to be bustling lately, holding his head high proudly, as if this would give him an unprecedented sense of victory, especially towards Lupin in front of him. People who used to be in the Predator Squad, or rather, people who used to tease and insult him. It seems that you are recovering well. Busy, Snape. Snape put his hands on the table, as if to lean his body out. No, want, call, me, name, word. You don't have the qualifications. Lupin sighed and stopped talking. This is your potion this time, and next month's wolf poison potion. Lupin picked up the potion and walked to the door, intending to say something, but when the words came to his lips, he forced them back. He couldn't say it. With a bang, the door closed. Snape, who should have been 3 zeros, stood in silence in the empty office. He should be happy to face someone who has bullied him and asks him for help, right? Potions master, charm master, Hogwarts professor and many more. Let him prove again and again that he is not weaker than those people, or even better than them. But why was he still not happy when such a thing happened? Is he really just sorry for her, as Anson said, instead of love? Snape couldn't sleep tonight, tossing and turning, thinking about what Anson had said to him. But the more I think about it, the more I feel helpless, guilt and loss. How can I doubt my beliefs? But what followed was an extreme grievance. Although he is from a half-blood, his outstanding talent has made him a potions master, and every few of them in the entire wizarding world can be compared with him. The potions made are hard to find in the outside world. In the study of magic spells, many magic were invented, such as the shadowless blade, the upside-down golden bell, and the closed earplugs. Even a professor at Hogwarts' superb brain occlusion allowed him to be at ease under Voldemort, helping Dumbledore provide information about the Death Eaters. And look at those people. James Potter is a shampoo seller, and he just eats the patent dividends of his ancestors. Lupin, but a werewolf. Without Dumbledore's kindness, he wouldn't even be able to enter the wizarding world, let alone learn magic. What about Sirius Black? What loyalty and responsibility does a man who has been expelled from the family talk about? As for Peter Pettigrew, ignore. But even if he had such power, he could only watch his woman come together with people who often teased and insulted him. Satirize. Now I have to help those enemies who used to be my own. Love. For the first time, Snape felt that he hated himself a little. A few days later, Snape's class became increasingly irritable and gloomy, often causing him to rage at a small event. Spit fragrant in the mouth to get the title. Ancestral descendants. A pair of eyes is like a radar installed. If any little wizard potion is brewed incorrectly, less will let him go to the office to clean up slugs, and more will lift the book and knock on his head. It is called helping the little wizard to open up wisdom. Among them, Harry was turned on the most times. So the little wizard speculated whether Snape had reached menopause. After all, wizards are also people. Anson hid in a corner, chattering. Anson, you seem proud. Dumbledore appeared beside Anson. Anson immediately withdrew the saliva at the corner of his mouth. Then what? When did you come, Professor? While you're laughing. I don't understand what you're talking about. Yes. Old Deng took a deep look at him and pointed out, Snape is a kind man and a loyal person. I can't bear him to go to that point. Can't bear it? Professor, I'm afraid you force people the most, right? We really don't make much difference. In the original play, Snape and undercover Voldemort died tragically. Professor, your conscience can be in the little wizard, in Harry and others. But why don't you see a poor person by your side? So, how just are the righteous, and the miserable can only be nothing more than miserable. Anson tilted his head. Where to go? Professor, do you want me to call Professor Snape back? Go ahead, you will have classes later. Okay. After stopping for a few minutes, Dangbredo smiled and left, muttering something old and old. Closing parenthesis. The following month. In the screen shed, Professor Lupin and Sirius meet again. This time Professor Lupin didn't turn into a werewolf. I've found an opportunity. I'll ask Hagrid to hand over Harry tomorrow and they will go to Hagrid's cabin for tea, and then the Weasleys will definitely go with them. 0. Sirius's eyes lit up. Good opportunity. When the time comes, lead them here, by beating the willow. Well, but if you want to clear your wanted and undo not have wrongs on your body, you still need Professor Dumbledore. Must it? This is the best way. Moreover, Peter needs to deal with it properly. The wizarding world is no longer the wizarding world we know. Cyrus Blake, who will hit Blake later, nodded. I've heard, and there are many wizards who seem to be deliberately looking for my place recently, not from the Ministry of Magic, but wizards from the Pendra family. Lupin's face was solemn. Haven't been discovered? No, who cares about a big black dog? It was better if so. The two continued to talk, and a few small wizards had already arrived here in the Beating Willow. Wonder. This is it. Delako pointed at the Beating Willow. I've seen them enter here with my own eyes, several times. Wanda had a smile on her little face. It seems that the time has come to make a name for yourself and goo the army, friends. The time to verify the truth has come. Hermione, wait, this is a Beating Willow, and any wizard who comes near it will be harmed. Ginny raised her wand. That blew it up? I think a few smashing spells can blow it up. Luna hurried to stop it when she heard this. Stop, you don't want to be caught by the professors, do you? I'm sure we'd have to do that, and we'll each get a 2.0 yelling letter. So what to do? Hermione drew her wand. Simple, all petrified. Swish. The willow branch that beat Willow itself wriggling unconsciously paused, and Hermione was overjoyed. Hurry up, my spell won't last long. The two in the shack finished talking, and they were just about to leave after a sad autumn. Several wands were already aimed at the two. Several Wonder people jumped out and shouted, "Don't move, COO army." Blake looked at Lupin who was standing on the side in confusion. What is the army of Coors? A cat. Wonder. Professor Lupin, don't be hippie and smiling. The army of Coors is sacred, and Coops are not cats, they just look like cats. Hermione said grimly. Sirius, your incident happened. Chapter 162. The Delako Curse was launched, except for your weapons. Luna breathed a sigh of relief when their wands fell into her hands. It was enough to have such a group of teammates, but it felt really good. Gather energy. Quick confinement. A rat hand suddenly grew on the wooden floor next to it, tying the two of them in place, motionless. Blake was even more confused, as well as the little Rita beetle hiding in the shadows. It's over. The things that the young master ordered are probably going to be ruined. Wanda stepped forward and looked back. It doesn't seem to be strong. Lupin's face was ugly. No, you guys let me go. Things are not what you see. Delako sneered. Professor, it's not a good thing to be in the same room with an Azkaban fugitive and talk and laugh. No, it's not what you think. Here, you tell them that they don't understand this. Hurry up and call Professor Dumbledore. Black simply bowed his head. Hell, are the little wizards of this era so brave? Wanda kicked 10 on Black. Still dare to be arrogant. The magic wand was raised. When he went up, he was knocked unconscious by 2 punches, and the two floated in the air and followed out of the screaming shack. On campus, Wanda walked in front of her like a princess returning from victory, and Blake behind her had been tied to a wooden pole and a banner. Book left. Sirius Black is here. Right book. There is an army of Goo showing its might. Horizontal batch. Goo army. The main theme is a rhyme. Look, it's Wanda, and behind her is Sirius. That fugitive? Merlin's shoehorn face. How is this possible? Go and ask Professor Dumbledore to come. Parade through the streets. Lupin and Blake were already panicked and outrageous, and they just wanted Professor Dumbledore to come quickly. They were about to lose sight of the little wizards. I don't say anything about pointing or something. The kind of eyes that look like a magical animal is too hot. Some of the little witches even came up and smacked their hands on Black. The name is that this is for him to check. Hell, I really believe it if you don't put any potion on me. It must be Slytherins. Dumbledore arrived a few minutes later. Merlin's eyes, what do I see? Dumbledore strode forward. Mr. Black, long time no see. Hi, Professor. The other side. Anson took Snape to the other end of Hogwarts. Near the Forbidden Forest, a running rat flees quickly through the jungle, apparently the Forbidden Forest, where he can perform phantom transfiguration. Bang! The huge arrow was inserted in the way of Peter Pettigrew, and he was in a hurry to change directions. Bang! Another arrow landed on the ground. Hagrid's huge body appeared in his eyes. He thought that Hagrid was just trying to kill the rat. But Ron's relationship with Hagrid was also very good. And how could you not recognize Ron's pet spots? Unless, he knows something. Pettigrew Peter Mouse fled in another direction, only to see a man standing here that frightened him even more. Snape, where do you want to go? Long gone. Pettigrew Peter, with a finger of the magic wand, the mouse-like animagus dwarflet returned to a human body, and Anson, who was standing on the side, immediately disgusted. If the Weasley family knew that, especially Ron knew that the mouse he had been holding was a wizard or a lewd old man, I don't know how they would feel. Big spit. Pettigrew approached flatteringly. Snape, why are you here? Ah, it's been a long time since I saw you. Yes, but I've been looking for you for many years. You shameless traitor, you actually killed her. I want to. Anson, Professor. Snape forced the killing intent to put down his wand, but he directly released a spell with his hand. Drill Heart Curse. The screams continued from the edge of the Forbidden Forest to the school. In the headmaster's office, Dumbledore listened to all Black's words, and also got the original memory from Pettigrew. So Peter, did you cut off your finger to confuse others? Pettigrew said fearfully. Professor, I just don't want to die. You don't know how powerful he is. I am also forced to do it. Blake drew his wand and held it against Pettigrew's head. As a last resort, you handed over your friend's address and asked Voldemort to kill them? Closing parenthesis ahem. Lupin coughed. Blake recovered and said apologetically to Harry, I'm sorry Harry, you know me. I understand. Dumbledore was silent, and he was honestly responsible for the death of Harry's parents, but more importantly, it was actually Harry's father's arrogance and the fate of unknown friends. It seems that he needs to go to Azkaban. Looking at Anson. Anson, what do you think? Professor, you are the Deputy Minister of the Ministry of Magic, I am just a student. Well, then Professor McGonagall, you should inform Minister Fudge at the Leaky Cauldron. You still have to do this on the surface. Of course. Dumbledore, Guami, is that what it is called? Old Deng winked at Wanda, slightly mischievous. Wanda leaned against the hill. Yes, Professor. Well, how about adding 20 points to your respective houses, in order to help classmates? In order to help the professor capture a fugitive. Oh, a 20, which means they earned 60 house points for Gryffindor this time. Ginny, it's a shame that Seamus should have been called in the first place. Snape's office. I want him to die. Anson smiled. No problem. What do you need for this 927 deal? The great revenge has to be revenged. Professor, how about joining the Pendra family? Moreover, after she was really resurrected, with the current situation in the wizarding world, you don't want to see her living in an unsafe place either, do you? Deal. Hey? Anson was a little frozen. Promised so cheerfully. Damn boy, I never regretted it when I promised. Anson raised his eyebrows. Of course I believe you, Professor. After all, your magic wand is birch. Loyalty, perseverance, patience, and responsibility are its characteristics. The main birch is the main material for flying broomsticks, and if this had not happened, you might have been a man of romance and freedom. A contract floats out. However, the contract still has to be signed. Hey, hey, hey. Snape rolled his eyes, reaching out and just touching the contract, and the contract burned directly. Well, this one is a contract signed by touch. This trick is a shameless one that Mephisto learned. Praise Mephisto. This doesn't seem to be a regular magic contract. Snape's face changed again and again. Anson, don't worry about this. You give me what you want, I give you what you want. It's fair. Snape didn't answer, pointing to the door. Anson bowed slightly. Wonan, Professor. Chapter 163. Things are clear. Black's guilt was exonerated, and the fact that he had spent more than 10 years in Azkaban in vain was ignored, not because he didn't want to mention it, but because he didn't know how to mention it. If it weren't for Dumbledore's lead, it is estimated that no one would have paid attention to Black. Peter Pettigrew was imprisoned in Azkaban, but appeared on Anson's magic tower in the evening. Harry was the happiest. First, he found out the reason for killing his parents and caught the enemy. The second is to know that he still has a godfather, and he still has his family. But when he asked Blake about his parents, he refused to say anything, or that it was the result of whoever he asked. Don't you know? For example, Dumbledore and Professor McGonagall, such as Hagrid, who has a better relationship. Why didn't they tell Harry? That's because, you really can't say, that your father is a villain, right? Snape, I testify, I am the Lord of Suffering. Later, Hagrid gave a cryptic hint and signaled him to come to Anson. He had listened to Professor Dumbledore talk about Anson's recent actions, and seemed to be deliberately moving for Snape's affairs, and Anson knew a lot. In the evening, after class, Harry walked into the Forbidden Forest under Hagrid's lead. The magic tower was pointy and tall even in Hogwarts, but when he reached his feet, he found a feeling of towering over the heavens and the earth. Arthur Weasley is already waiting here. Harry, long time no see. You are Mr. Weasley too. Let's go. And Hagrid, go in and have a butterbeer. I'll ask you to send Harry back later. Hell, it's either raining or raining. Mr. Weasley, how are you doing? Arthur waved his hand and smiled. The old way. In addition to research, it's just that you can do what you like now. Hagrid nodded. That's not bad. So did he. It seems that their lives have changed since they all came into contact with Anson. He can use magic, and his grievances can be washed away. Filch went from a squib to a wizard. The lives of the Arthur family have changed dramatically. Even Delako and Malfoy, who should have been annoyed, were playing with Hermione, and I heard that Wanda often beat Ron and Harry. Hi, it's normal for kids to make trouble. Oh, and Professor Quirrell, Merlin's magical animal. He didn't know how horrified he was when he knew that Voldemort was on Professor Quirrell. Thinking about it, Professor Quirrell would have been eager for someone to help him, right? Well, in short, it all seems to be because of Anson Sr. Arthur explained his intentions, and Harry was slightly anxious. Anson, you want to know who your parents are? Well, Professor, they don't tell me, not even my godfather. No matter who they are, I think I have to find out. And insisted, if they do something wrong, I'm willing to make amends for those mistakes. Very sincere. Just as the so-called situation creates heroes, although Harry's identity as a savior is forcibly pushed up, it is a pawn controlled by others. But it just so happens that the magic is here. With Anson in the limelight, he didn't have anything, and then there was Wanda's crushing shot at them, and he didn't seem to have many emotional swings. Instead, enjoy everything in the wizarding world. This is a child who insists on kindness and pursues beauty. For the first time, Anson had a new and fundamental change in his outlook. Novels. Just go to Felu closing parenthesis. This may be the general public of wizards. If I told you that the answer may not be beautiful, would you still listen? Of course, it's nothing more than right or wrong. I'm willing to endure everything. I'm their heir. My education doesn't allow me to run away from this. I'm a Gryffindor. Arthur and Weasley shouted yes and applauded. Hagrid sat on the side and smiled, even a little reddened in his eyes. He shouldn't have had to have suffered this. Anson nodded. Lady Rita, please come in. Outside the door, Rita and Skeeter pushed open the door and walked in. Everyone, good night. Tell him about what you recently discovered. It was probably some of the things that Blake and Lupin were trying to find out. Pettigrew, but to Harry's surprise, Professor Snape was still there. Anson, have you heard of marauders? Harry looked up. Is it related to my parents? Yes, it's a beautiful and sad story, and before I tell it, I need to ask you. Did you like Delako when you entered school? It's the way of being high, like to tease people, insult people. Harry frowned. Of course not. I mean, he's pretty good right now. We're friends. Well, then, what if your father treated you the way Delako did? Would you like someone like that? Harry was silent. He understood what Anson meant. There was some struggle in his eyes. Is this really the result he wants? But seeing Arthur and Hagrid's silence, I had to believe it. After a few minutes, he let out a breath. Then did he change it later? Maybe. Anson spread out his hand. I'm sorry, and besides, it's okay if you say it quickly. Hagrid whispered. Anson, he may not receive this yet. Hagrid, that's for sure you're kind. But you can't take care of him all your life. The eyes looked at him again and urged, it's okay to say it quickly. Harry was silent. Anson spread out his hand. You see, you know what I mean. What are those who were hurt by your father and them like now? You can't afford Harry. You can think of this as a grudge of the previous generation. Maybe this way you will be relaxed. Any idea why your godfather Black didn't tell you this? Because he himself is an evil person, and the memory of weak years is the strongest in a person's life. Maybe now there are many people scolding your father for dying well, and saying no. Wang Lee's ding. Arthur Weasley got up and poured tea for Anson. Anson said no more. Harry clasped his hands tightly. Is it related to Professor Snape? Hagrid and Weasley looked at Anson at the same time, and there was even a feeling in their eyes that Anson would not say it. Anson smiled and shook his head. This is another more beautiful and sad story. Maybe one day he will tell you personally. Of course. Here you mean Lillian Devinsley on time. Hela rolled her eyes. Mortal love, cut, like us are different. I fancy you have to let me give birth to a little god. This is called strong pairing. A cloud of black lines floated through Anson's eyes. Don't talk like an animal. Besides, I didn't ask you to rely on me. Hypocritical man. Don't think I don't know that you are also trying to use me. Chapter 164. Anson did not refute this. In itself, he wanted to use Hela. That's right. What is the greatest value of Hela? Once she arrives in Asgard, she will definitely change the original pattern of Asgard. If Odin dies at this time, then with the means of Thor and Loki, don't want to fight Hela for any future. As for the explosion of such a Sol in the original play, hey, if you burst 100 times, you will not be Hela's opponent. Of course, one will ask, what is the benefit of this for Anson? That's too much. In the forest, Harry silently followed Hagrid back, rubbing his heavy footsteps. Hagrid sighed. That's not something you should think about right now, Harry. You and Professor Dumbledore. He'll help you. Harry, Hagrid, like Anson said, you can't take care of me for the rest of my life, can you? He did not doubt his courage, nor did he doubt the image of his parents, whether good or bad. He had a responsibility to change and inherit everything, even if it's dark. Your own parents may have done wrong things to others, but everyone deserves a second chance, right? He'll try. 513. The next day of class. Snape was annoying to see Harry's eyes tighten for no reason when he saw him, and he couldn't help but give a life spell everywhere except those eyes. Great Mr. Potter, Tell me, how is the dragonskin magic robe made? Harry was stunned. He didn't even notice when Professor Snape had come to him, especially the man-eating eyes. Slightly scared and swallowed. Professor, I don't know, I think only Anson knows in the world. You don't know? So can you tell me what kind of courage has allowed you to wander in my class? Snape couldn't wait to lie on top of him, and his momentum had reached the point of scolding. How many rules of magic have been studied so far? Harry, sorry Professor, this question is still only Anson can answer. I don't know. You always know how to cure moles, right? After all, you are the most famous savior. Harry. Snape straightened up and said condescendingly, it seems that fame does not equal wisdom. Guys, Gryffindor deducts 10 points for Mr. Potter's unknown result. Bad. After class, Ron followed behind Harry. Hell, I think you provoked him somewhere. The professor seems to be staring at you today. Harry quickened his pace irritably, leaving a stunned Ron. Harry is also very wrong. Could it be that the little wizard has grown up? Night. There was a knock on the door of Snape's office, and Snape's arm that was brewing wolf poison inside shook, and the liquid in the test tube in his hand immediately fell. The potion in the crucible emitted a burnt smell and turned into a cloud of black smoke. Walking to the door and pulling hard, he was already in a bad mood, and he was even worse when he saw Harry. You, most, good, true, yes, things. Where had Harry seen such an angry Snape? He was immediately frightened and forgot what he wanted to do. In a trance, he was pulled in by Snape. Boom. The door closes. With a push, Harry had already fallen to the side of the chair, and Snape put his hands on the handle of the chair and looked down at him. The distance between the two people should not exceed 10 centimeters. Faintly, you can even see each other's noses gasping. It has been said that this distance is not what to ask for. It's what you want. Tell me what happened to you. Otherwise, even if Dengbredo came today, he would not be able to save you. Harry took a deep breath. Professor, I want to know what happened to my parents and you, and if they did something sorry for you, I would make up for you. Snape's eyes flashed with consternation for a moment. This was followed by humiliation. Then there was a kind of anger. Get up and scold angrily. Don't mention your father to me, you this. The more ugly words could not be said in his trembling mouth the moment he saw Harry's eyes. Harry, it seems to be my father. Tell me, where did you know this? The eyes are aggressive. Harry seemed to feel a lot more relaxed. Probably Professor Snape, but he didn't know what his father had done to him. So much so that Professor Snape now had such a great resentment just to see him. I asked Professor Dumbledore first, but he didn't tell me. Then Professor McGonagall, followed by Hagrid and Mr. Weasley. But none of them told me. So I went to find Anson and learned something. Snape only felt that a nuclear bomb was exploding inside him. Drawing his wand against Harry's head. Are you being sarcastic about me? You're showing off your father, aren't you? Isn't that so? Tell me. Hoarseness, no, collapse. He does not understand. Harry raised his hand. Professor. Snape pushed him away and sat himself behind his desk in silence, but the heaving chest showed that his heart was not at all calm. The two were silent for a few minutes. Snape hissed and spoke. Your mother is a very gifted witch. At least of all the witches I know, there is no one who can compare to her. But on that night, your damn father didn't protect her, and believing in people who shouldn't have led to her death. So, what does this have to do with my father? Anson told me that my father was similar to Draco, I mean when he first entered school. Snape sneered. Draco? He's no better than a tenth of your father's abominable. Well, get out of my office. Harry stood up and said seriously, I won't give up Professor Snape. For a long time, in the magic tower, Anson was not surprised to see Snape appear. Have a drink? Oh? I also know that I bring alcohol. It seems that my weight in your place has risen a lot, Professor, but unfortunately I am not allowed to drink alcohol before I am an adult. Snape thought to himself. With a mouthful, his face instantly distorted. Ugh, hiss. How can so many people like something like this? It's the same as life, isn't it? It's so bitter. Many people still try to live. Snape paused and smiled. Don't pretend to be an adult. You're just a damn child, and you still do so many things every day. Aren't you tired? Anson asked directly. Professor, you are carrying a self-forced regret. Aren't you tired for so many years? I'd be happy to. Don't get angry. Behave, Sid. Chapter 165. A few days later, Quirrell came to report that the Death Eaters in Europa were getting more frenzied. The last pure land of wizards in the Europa region has also disappeared, and even the major magic schools have been infiltrated and directly entered by Death Eaters. Their forcing wizards into the Death Eaters had already paid off, or at least their numbers had increased again. At one point, it reached 70,000. It's a huge number. But Voldemort is still unwilling. Most of these newly joined wizards can be pulled out and used. And how many of them are with him? Don't think about it. He didn't have to think about it. As long as he was still here, he dared to guarantee that these cowards would not dare to mess around. This guarantee comes from his own strength and cruelty. Killing people at every turn is no joke. Of course, what he gave was no longer a simple distribution of benefits, but what he really mastered. That is, the way beyond death. And Anson in the British region did not care about what Voldemort did. Anyway, This chess piece is on the road that Anson has arranged for him. The rest depends on how the stones on this road deal with it. Outside the Pendra department store, Fudge, the Minister of Magic, who has been working in the Leaky Cauldron bar for a long time, rarely appears, and Dumbledore is also here and a high-ranking member of the Ministry of Magic, plus various wizarding celebrities. Anson stood aside in a dragon-walking magic robe embroidered with the shape of a golden silk thread. A large banner hung above the crowd. Rules of Magic. What are the rules of magic? This has caused a sensation in the entire wizarding world last year, and no one will not know. This is about the future of the wizarding world, and it is also a lifesaver for squibs. It even gave Anson a first-class Merlin medal. Its appearance not only represents profit, but also promotes the progress of magic. After Professor Dumbledore finished speaking, he motioned for Anson to go up. The wizards in Diagon Alley held their breath and looked seriously at this little wizard who was only 13 years old. Everything he brought to the wizarding world was almost subversive. Many people have heard a phrase I said, "Make wizards great again." Anson was here. I'm thinking about how to make wizards great again. I think it's the rules of magic, and it's all our wizards. What can the rules of magic do? What is its significance? The rules of magic are the core of magic, a kind of operating rules that exist in nature and exist in the universe, and it is another manifestation of the core of the universe. It's mysterious. So, what does it mean if you master the rules of magic? Anson's gaze swept over the longing and greedy eyes of all wizards below. Very good. Mr. Pendra, what does it mean to master the rules of magic? I think that once wizards master enough rules of magic, it is a god. Hiss. God? The next reaction is, can they become gods? Since Anson can discover one or more magic rules, it is possible to discover more magic rules. At this moment, no matter who reacted to the fact, there is probably only one way to become the god in Anson's mouth. That is to follow Anson. Because, in the entire wizarding world, only Anson alone can discover this kind of rule. Even his announcement or non-announcement of a magic rule would cause greater changes in the wizarding world. If the previous pureblood family only mastered some kind of spell or potion, monopolize the part, then the current Anson is equivalent to mastering the future of wizards. Who doesn't want a better future? Anson. So today, I'm going to announce a few magic rules to the wizarding world. That is, remove your weapons, fall unconscious, and flame spells. 3. Just 3. With each spell Anson uttering, a wizard will immediately use his wand to emit light to carve the magic rule pattern of the spell. Maddening. It was as if they could use the spell behind these rules directly through it. Direct, powerful, easy. Even a young wizard who is familiar with these 3 magic rules will easily grasp the spells represented by these 3 rules. Even with the deepening of their research, they will develop the power of these spells to become even more powerful. Why are spells hard to learn? It is impossible to directly describe the core of the spell. Very general. For example, the Patronus Charm, the key to whether or not this spell can be cast is actually a happy positive emotion, as well as spells. Closing parenthesis. Seeing this, someone will remember that sentence, Transfiguration, it all depends on talent. But what if there is a magic rule core? 0 for flowers. 0. It's a way for wizards to learn magic intuitively, and the rule pattern itself is an analytic representation of the spell. As long as you master it, you can use wands, spells, gestures, or even emotions. This is what drives wizards crazy with the emergence of magical rules, which allows a large number of wizards to directly learn spells that they could not learn before, approximately equal to improve their talents and make learning easier. Such knowledge is in great need by wizards. There are more magic rules that will be placed in the Pendra family library, and anyone who has contributed to the wizarding world can consult the corresponding number of magic rules according to the level of contribution, and join the Pendra family. Cool. Below. Cleared of his grievances, Blake wrote down 3 rules of magic and returned home in Grimmauld Place. You found out, the 3 magic rules he published are very interesting. Black paused. What do you say? You see, except for your weapon, which is a basic spell of a wizard, almost anyone can use it. Fainting is a control spell, and the flame spell seems to be a basic spell, but I think it's more than that. The 3 spells can now be learned directly by anyone, and even develop more things from the foundation. This means that the basic strength of wizards has been improved. Basic spells, restriction spells, energy spells. It's a good match. I think he wants to do more, and now announcing the 3 magic rules may not be the same as it seems. Perfection should be vigilant. Blake always believed that Anson had a purpose. Otherwise, choose to announce the rules of magic at this time? It was last year that Anson was able to discover the rules of magic, and the fact that a large number of squibs turned into wizards seems to have become a default fact in the wizarding world. What does Anson want to do? Even Dumbledore did not know. Magic Tower. Anson came back here and looked at Peter Pettigrew in the cage. Sir, I'm still useful, really. Please don't dissect me anymore, I'm still useful. Anson smiled. Oh, don't be like this, turn into a mouse. Last time I didn't understand how you maintained human intelligence after transformation. Chapter 166. Forcing Peter Pettigrew to switch back and forth between mice and humans made Anson feel amazing. Strictly speaking, when Pettigrew is a mouse, there is magic in the body, but it cannot be mobilized, and the magic rules are different. It's different from when you were in wizard form. The magic makes Anson a little confused. Is it possible the rules will change? According to his previous understanding of the rules of magic, the rules are fixed and cannot be changed. Otherwise, the human form can cast spells, and the wizard in the form of animagus should also be able to cast spells. So Peter Pettigrew saw what it means to be a man who is more terrifying than Voldemort. Quirrell, young master, at present, more than half of the wizards of the native wizards are applying to join the Pendra family, and there are still a large number of wizards on the sidelines. Wizards who have not 117 overseas have some fun. They beg us to publish all the rules of magic, threatening that this should be the knowledge of the wizarding world, and should not belong to us alone. Anson fell. What is this argument? It seems that they have not been plagued enough by the Death Eaters, and the original plan to spread overseas has been postponed. Quirrell nodded. Then what should be done with wizards who apply to join the family? As long as you sign the contract, it's okay, and if you don't want to sign the contract, you will follow what we originally discussed and distribute the benefits according to the contribution. If you want to get it, you have to pay. It's a simple truth. If there are still people who want to have a fight with the Pendra family at this time, he will also be happy. We've sent back information from Mika's people, and the Magic Congress over there is also asking us to disclose all the rules of magic. Don't bother, clean up the Death Eaters of Europa and clean them up. Got it. After studying the animagus, Anson went down to the floor where alchemy and magic items were studied, and nearly 10,000 legions of alchemy wizards were stationed. The consumption incurred is enormous. Fortunately, most of the materials of the Pendra family can produce themselves, and there are various industries that are constantly generating new income. Can be raised. Sir, Mr. Weasley, how's it going? Arthur and Weasley excitedly introduced Anson. Sir, this is what you asked us to do about the perfection of the Vanishing Cabinet technology and the Flu Network technology obtained from the Ministry of Magic. Together, we get a completely new kind of technology. Anson's eyes lit up. Can Muzz pass? Yes. Have you tested it? As well as repeated tests many times, both in terms of safety and distance, far beyond the current Ministry of Magic Flu Network construction, we have succeeded. Seeing that the written down data had been made in the process, Anson was happy. Don't look at these technologies that don't seem to be very conspicuous. After all, the wizarding world has dorkies, flunet, flying broomsticks, phantom transfigurations, etc. that can provide travel options. But most of them have various restrictions, and distance is a troublesome matter. Now that they have broken through this technology, it will play an extremely important role in Anson's future planning for the wizarding world. That is, how to bring the global wizarding community together. Only by shortening the distance between each other can this plan begin. Arthur and Weasley couldn't wait to introduce other magical items. This is a new magic robe, although it is not made of dragon skin, but we have added an iron armor charm on top, which is cheaper than the expensive dragon skin magic robe. But the relative defense is much weaker. Seeing that Anson didn't seem to care much, Arthur also had a little headache. With the dragon skin magic robe pearl jade in front, what he is doing now really doesn't seem to make much sense. But take out an alchemy item casually, something similar to a round ball. Look, sir, this is? Closing parenthesis. Didn't Mr. tell me some time ago about the Philosopher's Stone in our hands? According to Mr. Gentleman's description of the future use of the Philosopher's Stone, I think it can be so. Even if you use the Philosopher's Stone to charge magical items, and then apply various spells, you can also do things that Muzz can also cast magic. What spell is being cast here? Or the iron armor? My idea is to add this to the modified Mull items. You know, I like those. But it also reminded Anson of many uses. Looking at it, the structure of this kind of thing under the real eye is not much complicated. It's just based on the alchemy method of the Weasley family. But if there is really a Philosopher's Stone, it can indeed be charged with the Philosopher's Stone. The first industrial revolution in the wizarding world can't be rushed. If he wants to complete the entire reform of the wizarding world, he needs to at least control the entire wizarding world. Otherwise everything is just a dream flower shadow in the sky attic. In the evening, Dumbledore called Anson with his patron saint, a fine white phoenix. Anson's own patroness is also a fire dragon. When he first arrived at the office, he was surprised to find that Harry's godfather, Black and Snape, were inside, and Dumbledore was still clutching a locket in his hand. Well, it should be Slater's locket. Another Horcrux of Voldemort. Also, Black's appearance will inevitably go back to the Black family house, and it just so happens that the Slytherin locket is there now, kept by an old house elf. Presumably Blake discovered this thing, and even discovered that his brother had lurked among the Death Eaters for these things. Good night, professors. Salute slightly. Dangbreddo gestured to him. Anson, you should know what this thing is. Do you have any suggestions? Since the Horcrux has been discovered, of course, it is to destroy it. Professor, what do you think? Of course, just a few of us alone may not be able to destroy it, so 2.32. Anson smiled and shook his head. Professor, the destruction of Horcruxes is not only consumed with a large number of life-killing spells, in fact, fire spells are also possible. It's just that it is consumed with a life spell, which can only ensure that the items carrying Voldemort's Horcruxes will not be damaged. And now Anson is happy to see it. Another Horcrux is gone, and it is estimated that Voldemort will be very cranky. Christmas. Anson dressed up the lobby with Professor Flitwick as usual. As soon as the wand pointed to the top of the lobby, various scenes were immediately transformed, and the dynamic pattern was changed with Anson's mind. Flitwick clapped his hands. Superb weather spell. Anson, you should not have many people who can compare with the study of weather spells. Pass the prize, Professor. The rules of the weather spell have been obtained from the Thunderbird, and he is naturally easy to grasp and study deeper. Chapter 167. Around Christmas. There are many novel flying vehicles in the Pendra department store, which Arthur and Weasley led the research, such as flying cars, flying motorcycles, flying magic carpets, etc. Anyway, compared to the flying broom that can jam the crotch, the newly launched flying vehicle is more sci-fi and faster. Of course, this is a legal sales qualification issued by the Ministry of Magic. As for how this kind of thing came out, who doesn't know? But everyone loves it. First, they accepted the wizarding village built by the Pendra family, and those advanced and supporting facilities allowed the wizards to enter the civilization from their primitive state. The so-called from luxury to thrift. Moreover, Rita and Skeeter made introductory remarks on improving the quality of life of wizards for several days. This is very effective. Young master, if you want to build a new teleportation tool and network, I am afraid that there will be some problems according to your ideas, such as if there are no restrictions on the people who come and go. That will have an impact on the stability of the wizarding world. Anson, you know mall stations and airports, right? Follow their pattern to create a mouth-to-mouth docking pattern that belongs to wizards. This 10. It's okay. How much is made first? It is important to secretly build the corresponding transportation hubs around the world, not to publish them and not let anyone know. As for how much needs to be built where, according to the number of wizards and muzz in the area, Mr. Quirrell, you must pay attention to this issue. Understood. Hearing Anson's words, Quirrell suddenly understood that this semester was coming to an end. Almost every year, the young master of his own family will disappear for a while, and I heard that it is another world. He also has hot eyes. Young master. What's wrong? I wonder if I can go together this time? Quirrell immediately continued. At present, there are witch parties and some purer blood families fighting against the Death Eaters in the Europa region, and the beautiful Carside is gradually joining. They won't show up in the mainland, and I don't think he will want to see Professor Dumbledore and, I mean, can I go together this time? Of course, you can. But this requires one person to be responsible for the family's inheritance, you know. Many wizards just look at it on the surface and dare not go against us. Secretly, is the family business attacked by dark wizards almost every day? Why, the same truth that the bold say Darko takes maternity leave, especially for things like dragon skin magic robes. As long as you grab a piece, you can exchange a lot of benefits. Anson suddenly thought, what do you think of Professor Snape? Snape? Of course, I don't evaluate this person in other aspects, but it should not be a problem in loyalty. But once he knows these secrets of the family, will there be trouble? After all, Snape had a very good relationship with Professor Dumbledore. Quirrell's concern is noteworthy, but there were many reasons why Snape had a good relationship with Professor Dumbledore. But Anson and Snape signed a new magical contract. This thing, more than anything else. So be it. In the future, Professor Snape will also have a very important role in the family, and my original idea was to absorb him in. But now it is just in advance. When the evening comes, Snape came to the magic tower. What? I control all the properties of the Pendra family? Snape's eyes almost looked like you had drunk fake wine. It's crazy, isn't it? If I say yes, does that mean that I can also read those magic rules in your Pendra family library? Quirrell smiled and nodded. Of course. In fact, wizards who join the family can watch for free, and Professor Snape can certainly watch it. But I don't know how to do business. It's a lot harder than brewing potions. There is no need to deliberately control anything. The family industry has its own goals and tasks that are far away, and under normal circumstances, nothing will happen. Anson explained, we're just away for a while and we'll be back soon. Snape looked at him deeply. No wonder no one can find Anson after the holiday every year. It seems that there is a secret here. Snape left. Anson thought about next year, which should be interesting. By then, the Europa region should already be inextricably linked to the Death Eaters, and even one side may be crippled, and Anson's arrangement for the wizarding world. This is the harvest stage. Moreover, there seems to be a 3-school competition next year. With the existence of magic rules, he couldn't think of anyone who would be able to resist falling into his hands next year. The native wizarding world is now firmly in his hands. Even now he wanted to subvert the local Ministry of Magic. It was just a matter of a sentence. Didn't he see that Fudge had been driven to the Leaky Cauldron bar? However, there is still a while. Just take your time. Continue to return to his lab to research things about Animagus. Pettigrew Peter has lost his breath, and the whole person sees Anson from the original fear to anger to the current dullness. There was a faint feeling of wanting to die quickly. Closing parenthesis. Snape came to see it once, leaving only one sentence that you really look like a demon and left. Anson shook his head and didn't care. This is what you asked for. and it has a half-time relationship with me. Several family wizards were on the side to help. How was it today, young master? The heir has been born. This is all the data. Data 150 shows that the offspring born to animals of the same species in the form of animagus live in animal form and do not possess any wizarding characteristics and intelligence, nor fantastic beasts. The structure is no different from that of a mouse. It is equivalent to saying that a wizard really became that kind of animal after the transformation of animagus. As for the conversion of mass and energy, Anson believes that it is not disappearing, like Peter Pettigrew, whose human body seems to have lost some of its substance after he turned into a mouse. But this part of the substance did not disappear out of thin air, but became magic stored in the body of his mouse. When he returns to being human, this part of the energy will become the part of the material lost by the human being. Because animagus cannot cast spells in its form, it will not affect the disappearance of substances that turn into magic. That is, wizards can transform back and forth at will and be fine. So, it should be an ego protection mechanism. After all, a squib can allow him to research and become a wizard again, and in this case, it is not difficult for Anson not to cast spells in the form of animagus. The difficulty is how to become a magical animal, especially with him and Old Deng. The guardian saint is either a phoenix or a dragon. Once they practiced animagus, they could only be animals in the form of guardian spirits. Chapter 168. The book continues above. According to this reasoning, combined with Anson's understanding of the rules of magic, that is, the rules of magic are the core of the universe and even all things. Simply put, if a wizard learns all the rules of a certain magical animal, or inscribes all the magical rules of that animal, does that mean you can become this magical animal? Coalfilge. The one called Evan and Rosia hasn't been handed over yet, has he? Yes, young master. Originally we wanted to wait for the Rosia family of Valancius to redeem it, but then they seemed to forget because the Death Eaters suddenly attacked in full force. Young master, do you need to bring him over? Well, bring the one with you. I need some material for the experiment. Got it. An hour later, Evan, Rosia, and to be precise, the native Rosia family were placed on the magic tower. Looking back, how many magic rules do dragons have? This depends on what kind of dragon it is, but it is probably strengthening, flame. Some special dragons will also have magic rules such as venom, but very few, very chicken. Then if a wizard has all the magic rules of the same kind of dragon inscribed on him, is it just like Anson envisioned? Animagus can be transformed into a dragon. 3 days after the inscription rules were completed, Evan Rosia realized what Anson wanted them to do. You want us to learn animagus? No, it's impossible. I learnt it in school, but failed. Anson, for the advancement of the wizarding world, Mr. Rosia, your sacrifice is necessary. Out of the body, after casting the capture curse one by one, they were controlled to follow the steps and materials required by animagus, and the core level was to take it during a thunderstorm. For wizards who have mastered the weather spell, it is not much of a problem. Another month after all the steps were completed, Anson lifted the capture curse on them, and instead used the minor gem to control them. 15 wizards raised their wands to their hearts and said, Amado, Animo, Animado, Animado. Nothing has changed. Quirrell, young master, after all the steps of the animagus transfiguration have been prepared, it is necessary to constantly chant the spell between sunset and sunrise, waiting for a suitable opportunity. I heard Professor McGonagall say that chant appears randomly, and once it appears, you feel a second heartbeat inside your body, which means that animagus is starting to deform. In the future, it is necessary to find an open place to wait for the transformation. You can't refuse that impulse to deform, otherwise it's good if the deformation fails, and if you become halfway to the appearance of a person, an animal, or an animal, that is a sin. It is said that the situation will not be able to become a wizard again for 3 days in a row. Finally, a wizard reacted. Opening his mouth to howl, there was actually a faint dragon's cry inside, and Anson and Quirrell looked at each other. Immediately raised the wand and let the other experimental materials fly aside. The wizard's body that had begun to deform twisted, and under the eyes of reality, his original magic rules were changing from one to belonging to a dragon. Anson's eyes were fiery. Roar. A long roar. The wizard's head first changed into the shape of a dragon, and slowly his limbs began to turn into dragon claws, and his body was slowly covered with scales and even grew a tail. A pair of flesh wings is slowly stirring. Hiss. Quirrell couldn't help but tremble his body. If it really did, then the young master would break an impossible fact that belonged to the wizarding world. It became possible. That is, the wizard transforms into animagus. Merlin's wings. Is this really possible? The dragon obediently stood motionless on the magic tower, like a statue. Before Anson could be happy, the next second with a bang, the dragon exploded directly. Young master, what's wrong? Anson excited. The magic in his body is not enough to support him to turn into a dragon, but our method is right. Not only is it right, but even he has been determined to be feasible. Alas, no, if this method reaches Dengbredo's mouth, it is equivalent to saying that Dengbredo cannot die. After all, once he transforms, he will most likely be a phoenix. Why is your own a dragon? Of the 15 wizards, only one survived the final experiment. The only one. But he survived in another way, and in order to ensure that he could complete his transformation, Anson had to have a large number of wizards replenish his magic at any time. It is enough to reach the foundation of turning into a dragon. Magic is the key to animagus transformation into a magical animal. Just looking at the body of the dragon is an unknown number of times that of a wizard. How much magic does it take for the wizard to use to transform the body of a dragon? Not to mention the rules represented by the other abilities that dragons are equipped with. It all takes magic to back it up. Damn it. Once they stop providing this wizard with additional mana supplies, he will inevitably blow up like other wizards who have died. To put it bluntly, it is drained of magic power, and even the power of the physical body, and once the energy in the body cannot support this body that should be balanced, the result is obvious. Wave your hand. Boom. Chilo immediately stepped forward. Young master, do you still want to arrange experimental materials? No thanks. He already had a perfect experiment material. Next, Anson knocked on Hagrid's cabin with gifts. Bang bang bang. Who? Opening the door, Hagrid saw Anson. Although Anson wasn't his first time here, Hagrid was a little surprised. Novels. Just go to Felu closing parenthesis. Anson, what are you? Giving the gift. Hagrid was a little restrained, and he didn't know that he thought that this was not his home. Hagrid, do you like fantastic beasts? Hagrid patted his chest and said, of course, you know, I'm still a professor in Hogwarts Fantastic Beasts Protection class. Although you didn't come to my class once. Dwang Zhao. Anson was a little embarrassed. I have a chance here now, Hagrid, an interesting opportunity. I don't know if you want it or not. What opportunity? I'm sorry Anson, you know I'm not a very powerful wizard. I'm afraid I can't help you. No. Only you can help with this favor, but if you succeed, maybe your name will be recorded in the history of magic forever. I'm sure of that. Hagrid scratched his head. Tell me first, do you want to turn into a dragon? Anson said to himself, I mean, I have a way to turn you into a dragon, that is, fantastic beasts. Hagrid, this is a chance team that will give you more contact with fantastic beasts. I promise it will be safe. Hagrid, I need to ask Professor Dumbledore. Out of the body, out of the body, out of the body. Chapter 169. Hagrid looked at Anson in confusion, and Anson was also holding his wand in stand. He seemed to have forgotten that he had sent Hagrid the dragon skin magic robe, although it is the kind of magic robe that has not been added vibranium, can still resist the spell. Hagrid, Anson, what do you want to do? Spread out my hands. Very speechless. What? I'm just kidding you. Hagrid didn't say much about Anson, but dragged Anson into his room. When you didn't show up, the Ministry of Magic stipulated that anyone who used the unforgivable curse would be sentenced by the Ministry, which is crazy, isn't it? But I don't think there's anything wrong with it. It's okay to say we're afraid of death. It's okay to say we're afraid of power. At least we're alive. Before a wizard wants to become bad, he must think carefully about whether he can bear what he needs to bear. Indeed, Anson, your appearance has brought about a huge change in the wizarding world, and everything seems to be changing for the better, which is good. Even Professor Dumbledore said so. But no matter which of us seems to have the same question about you. Anson asked curiously. Hagrid, I'm sorry, but I don't know what the doubt is. Anson, do you really lack a sense of awe for life? Anson was silent. 590 Life. Whether life is valuable in the hands of the strong does not depend on the weak. This is certain. And being able to have compassion and respect for the lives of the weak as a strong person is something that only great people can do. Anson is certainly not such a person. He was sure of that. Hagrid did not get an answer from Anson, nor did he rush, but picked up his own small red umbrella. Even if he can use his wand openly now, he is still used to putting his wand in a small red umbrella. Anyway, it rains every day in England. No one dares to guarantee whether disaster will come first or heavy rain will come first on British soil. Let's go. Anson was a little surprised. Are you willing to help me? Hagrid smiled. Dumbledore said you are a trustworthy person, and I believe in you too. Raise an eyebrow. Anson felt even more ashamed. Hagrid patted him on the shoulder, and the two walked side by side into the magic tower. When after listening to what Anson said, even Hagrid's strong heart couldn't help but swallow. Merlin's red umbrella. You succeeded in your research? If you analyze it from the data, yes, but there is still a key experimental subject missing. Hagrid frowned. So you think I can? Yes. Hagrid is a hybrid of trolls and humans, a giant, and his huge body has a total amount of mana over the years that is higher than that of a normal wizard. Moreover, he belongs to a giant himself, and to some extent, his physical strength is much higher than that of humans. Blessed with unique bloodline talent. Not all of wizards' preaching of pure blood theories is all, otherwise, how could so many people approve of it? Seeing Hagrid silent, Anson was a little anxious. Hagrid, I promise that you will be fine even if you fail, but if you succeed, you may be the first to safely transform into a magical animal. That's a dragon. Hagrid had a history of failing to raise dragon cubs, and there was probably no other person in Hogwarts who really liked magical animals. There is no more suitable than him. Looking up at Anson, two big eyes were aimed at him. You promise? I promise. Anson nodded sharply. Hyja paused, on the other side of the forbidden forest. Your brother, you know? Hagrid realized something. It seems that even if I don't promise you, I have found a way to make me comply, and it is indeed the little wizard of Slytherin. At the same time, he also clearly understood what would change in the wizarding world if he really succeeded. Transforming into a magical beast, don't look at it as just an improvement in transfiguration, but in fact, bad closing parenthesis note whether wizards have more mana than fantastic beasts, or whether fantastic beasts have a higher total amount of mana than wizards. Under normal circumstances, this point is always a victory for fantastic beasts. At least that's the case for equal body sizes. If the intelligence of fantastic beasts is the same as that of wizards, it is still unknown what race dominates the wizarding world. So, when does it start? Same approach. Hagrid had been uncomfortable for a long time. After all, it would take a long time to prepare before the animagus transfiguration could take place. Until one morning, Hagrid, who had been casting a spell as usual in the magic tower, suddenly felt the beating of 2 hearts clearly on his chest. He immediately realized that the time had come for him to perform the animagus transfiguration. Closing parenthesis, the wand made a sharp sound and hurried to the side to wait. When Anson arrived, Hagrid had completed his transformation and a huge dragon was sitting quietly in the laboratory. Hagrid. The dragon nodded. Anson was excited. My own conjecture was indeed correct. You try to become a wizard again, be careful, we are not in a hurry. Anyway, and sure it is feasible, then there is no need to fight for time. Hagrid dragon's body is slowly turning back into a wizard. Even the clothes on the body were not damaged. Perfect. Hagrid touched himself, glad that everything was there. Looking up at Anson, he sighed with emotion. This kid seemed to make a huge change in the wizarding world every time. This time too. If the fact that he can transform into a magical animal today is known to the outside world, I wonder if most people will drop their jaws. Master Newt is probably one of them. Oh, and Professor McGonagall and Professor Dumbledore. How? Under Anson's realize, the rules in Hagrid's body that belonged to him had been fully restored, and the dragon rules seemed to be working together in a unique way. It's a good thing. It's okay, it seems that we succeeded. But we will have to transform each other in the next few days. I understand. In the evening, Hagrid returned to his cabin and laughed with emotion. The giants hated by wizards are actually so important in Anson's eyes, and Anson has told him many theories that are not in the wizarding world during this time. Anyway, he probably understood some of the meaning, that is, the giant bloodline potential is very high, or rather, the mestizo potential is high. Of course, the half-blood mentioned here is not the opposition of pure blood, but wizards with special bloodlines, such as the giant Hagrid, such as the dwarf-like Professor Flitwick. Needless to say, the former's body is already able to explain everything. Chapter 170 A rare return to Pendra Manor. Professor Snape happened to be here, and he was handing over some things to Quirrell on property management, although many things did not require him to intervene personally. But there are still things to guard against. For example, old Deng, this guy's kindness to Anson's plan is always possible something wrong. For example, Voldemort, with the Wizard Legion, may not dare to attack the mainland at present, but it is not safe for this group of crazy children to pump their brains. Who makes people crazy? Looks like you're in a good mood. Snape wouldn't give him a good face, or that this was the face to anyone. Anson nodded. Of course, you haven't finished the handover yet? Snape rolled his eyes. Only after taking over would he understand why Anson had so much confidence to dare to resist the entire wizarding world. A few wizard legions, Merlin's white pole, tens of thousands of wizards. They were all frantically equipped with that new dragon skin magic robe, not to mention, the Pendra family's industry spread throughout the wizarding world. The industry in the local wizarding industry has reached at least 60%, and all them are high quality and core industries involving wizards. Not to mention those overseas. It is said that now Anson sneezes and the overseas economy is shaking. Of course, the most important thing is the library of the Pendra family, which contains a lot of knowledge that Hogwarts does not have. These are all snatched by Anson's major pure blood families, and they are very precious. But it is also free and open to the people of the Pendra family, and open to those who contribute to the Pendra family and contribute to the wizarding world. Very contradictory. Quirrell, young master, the basic things have been arranged. I believe Professor Snape will be fine. At first, he didn't understand anything, and slowly learned after Spencer. Isn't nothing going on now? The main thing is that Anson's purpose is clear. What you want to do is done in one direction, and there will be no big mistakes. End of semester, exams. This year, before the results came down, Anson ran, but did not let those dogs show off the opportunity. Wanda grimaced. Alas, you said that I worked so hard, why can't I get excellent? Anson rolled his eyes. This sister seems to be stunned by herself. Raised waist. A week later, Dumbledore came to the magic tower, and Snape sat in Anson's usual seat drinking tea. He's gone. Gone. Old Deng Lent froze. So you can mobilize all the resources of the Pendra family now? In theory, yes. Dumbledore, Severus, I congratulate you on your fortune. We are friends. You don't want to see something happen to your friends, do you? What's going on? First tell you that I made a contract with him that I have never seen before. Anyway, I can't resist the terms of the contract. It's not a big deal. It's just that the Triwizard Tournament will be held at Hogwarts next school year, you know. It's hard to hold it again. Old Deng sighed. What is certain now is that the other two schools of magic appear to have been controlled by the Death Eaters. Snape raised his head when he heard this. You doubt he will return? Well, that's for sure. That's why I thought about coming to Anson to discuss, you know. Now the native wizarding world is almost under the control of the Pendra family. Marvel Universe. When Anson reappeared with someone, it was a long time away. Mr. Quirrell, welcome to Avalon Castle. Avalon? The place where King Arthur lived was legendary, but he didn't expect to be here. Quirrell was like a pilgrimage. Outside, Wanda had already left. Hall, you take Mr. Quirrell to familiarize yourself with this place, and deal with the magical animals we brought back. Yes, young master. Come to the office and ask someone to call Spencer. Young master, welcome back. Spencer smiled. Anson nodded. Long time no see, Mr. Spencer. What is Elise busy with? She's dealing with things overseas, and the industries that the vampires used to run now have some hands to deal with after they're gone. Well, and werewolves. The property of vampires plus werewolves is an objective fortune that should not be missed. How are things outside the passage handled? And after the construction, and we also have a lot of weapons inside, but I recommend putting wizard's means inside. I'm coming back this time to think about things here. That passage can enter the world of dark elves, even if there are not many dark elves over there now. But as a star civilization, it should be no worse. Zero ask for flowers to read violent novels, just go to fellow novel network. Closing parenthesis maybe, though. The Nine Realms is a very special place, with both the power of the mysterious side and the power of the technological side. This dark elf is like that. Hela laughed. My king, you have obtained the ether particles. It is not destined to go with the dark elves, and their leader has been blinded by hatred. Malachus? It seems to be called that name. If you want me to say, just hit Asgard directly when I recover my divine power. You're going to stay up until Odin dies? Hela spread her hands. Why not? I could feel the strength in his body growing at every moment, and his body couldn't hold out for long. Anson suddenly said, I have a question. Will you Asgardians still have a place to go after they die? Hela turned her head and stopped talking. Equal to default. In this way, what is the point of waiting for Odin to die? Only the power that is grasped in the hand is the real power. However, the Dark Elves can still plan a wave. But before that, you need to strengthen a wave of your own power. A month later, Anson suddenly turned into a huge dragon in the castle of Avalon, roaring up to the sky. Roar? Ahem. Hey, why can I speak? Quirrell, who was standing in the distance, opened his mouth wide, as if Hagrid could not speak. Despite his wisdom. Young master? It's okay, don't be nervous, it shouldn't be a bad thing. Anyway, there are already a lot of strange things on him, and the devil knows what power King Arthur has handed down. Flutter your wings and fly. Huge wings flapped under Anson has come to the air. Soon, huge eyes can clearly see an ant on the ground, and even a mermaid that is docked inside the lake. Open your mouth. Poof! Huge flames erupted from the mouth. Falling apart, the surface of the lake was lifted. Spells can still be used, which is not the same as the transformation of regular wizards, and other subjects need to slowly train a little if they want to continue using the spell after transformation. This time will not be possible until at least close to a year. It deals with the causes of the deformed body affected by energy loss. Not here in Anson, the magic is enough, and these two infinity stones are supported, so there is no need to worry about it. Chapter 171. It was his first real flight in the sky. Human beings have always pursued freedom in the sky, not only flying, but only flying can make human beings experience freedom so intuitively. Wings flapping. The huge wind blows through the body, and the feeling of freedom is excellent. He can feel the temperature of the sun, he can feel the direction of the grass blowing from the ground, and he can feel the cheerfulness of every cell in his body. Roar? Spencer smiled. It seems that the young master likes it very much. Quirrell nodded as well. I've known the young master for so long, and I've never seen the young master so happy, even if he has achieved so much. Long. Anson landed and returned to his human form, and the sense of strength just now suddenly receded, and there was a more uncomfortable feeling. Quirrell, young master, you still need to try more 657 to get used to the body of the animagus form, but the current level of the young master has broken through the limitations of the wizarding world. Once transformed into a magical animal is recognized as impossible. Anson completed the breakthrough. Once transformed into animagus, it was considered unable to cast spells. Anson also completed this breakthrough. The thing is so interesting. The wizarding world seems to have had a lot of huge radical changes because of the appearance of the young master, not just financially. Next, the 500 elite mages who remained in the Marvel world began to transform, and it still took a month to complete. Take it easy. In the office. How's it going over there in Wakanda? There is no movement. Princess Surua seems to have accepted her fate, and the vibranium that has been mined so far is being transported to Avalon for preservation, and Spencer has once again carved out a huge space under the castle of Avalon to store these invisible materials and special items. It is equivalent to saying that they have emptied Wakanda's inventory. Of course, it's no different for Wakandas. The vibranium they used before is enough for them, and it would be a waste for them to continue to give vibranium to the newly mined and stored vibranium. In order not to ensure that this material is wasted by those people, Spencer felt that it was necessary to protect vibranium to a certain extent. Praise to the people of Wakanda. Waving his hand, start building according to the portal we brought back this time. Build a portal in a city, and arrange for our people to garrison. Quirrell nodded. This portal technology should be better controlled over there in Wakanda. Spencer listened to Quirrell's brief description and immediately understood the importance of this technology. But the area where Anson really wants to use it is in space. Now that the distance limit of the portal has not been tested, it is necessary to test it. Just before the last time he left, he was still chasing the Skurrus, and the headquarters of the Skurru is in outer space. A spaceship to be exact. If you gain control of this spacecraft, that means that the scientific and technological means under Anson's power will climb to another level in a short period of time. What about Skurru? Spencer paused and slowly shook his head. In the beginning, our wizards did find a lot of Skurru, but then they seem to have started to hide, and now it is difficult to find another Skurru. Does that Fury know? We had someone to monitor him, but nothing was found, and he didn't contact the Skurru during this time. Impossible, right? Anson is a little unconvinced, and the Skurru have a special relationship with Fury. The two are mutually exploitative. The difference is that Fury believes that he can control the dangers of all this. After all, there is Captain Marvel behind the background. Closing parenthesis. It's still something. The Skurrus, on the other hand, have become accustomed to their own talents, and even the two of the three great empires cannot target their talents. Earthling? Naturally, neither can neither. So, when wizards were able to find the Skurru people in the crowd, they were surprised and horrified. Fortunately, the number of wizards is limited, and they can find at most one or two at a time, which cannot cause much damage to their power on Earth. That's a good thing. Come to the Passage of the Nine Realms. This place has been built by Mr. Spencer into a huge tall building, and the interior of the tall building is even equipped with different levels of weapons, and wizards are stationed all year round. Even the security personnel on the periphery are people who were cultivated by the Pendra family, and they are people who have been inscribed with the rules of the dragon. This force is enough to defend here. 0 At the core, a huge space is preserved. Anson has asked that at least the arrangement of large force transfers be carried out at any time. As long as the dimension where the Dark Elf is located is still in the Nine Realms, this passage will definitely exist, unless Odin banishes the dimension of the Dark Elf, the same as the heavenly dimension. Otherwise, others will not have the ability. Hela looked at it. 1,000. That's where you got that gem, right? I remember my great-great-grandfather seemed to have sealed etheric particles in a place where no one could find them. By implication, this is a good fit for Asgard's description. Yes, but have you ever had any encounters with the Dark Elves? Hela turned her head to look at Anson. My king, are you interested in them? I can't say. Maybe you can get some benefit from it. There is no need to think about it. The real wealth is in Asgard, and the Dark Elves are just a group of defeated losers, but there should still be a few hands, and it is not easy. What is the most powerful power of the Dark Elves? Biotechnology plus the cursed warrior of wizard technology modification. This kind of thing was once able to fight the Hulk. Maybe there will be more power. But what Anson cares about is the mysterious side power of the Dark Elves. Only if the amount of knowledge is large enough, you can see more things. There is no doubt about that. Hela was suddenly stunned at 1.8, and looked at Anson's eyes with some surprise. I didn't expect you to think of this so early. How did you know that it was almost time for the Nine Realms to connect? Anson shrugged. From the Asgard collection, you Asgardian people seem to be not very friendly to these collections, and not many people realize that it is the real power. The crowd returned to Wakanda, a city that is more sci-fi than the outer world. Stark had come here to study how to discover the Skurru apparatus, and although it ultimately failed, he was surprised by many of the techniques here. Even shocked. Unfortunately, his memory was modified by the wizard when he left. Princess Surui. Long time no see. Surui rolled her eyes. Say something if you have something. I wonder if you're interested in living somewhere else. Chapter 172. I wonder if you're interested in living somewhere else. Surui frowned. You guys want all the vibranium? To be honest, without Wakanda's technology, you probably wouldn't even be able to mine vibranium. This is the truth. Anson doesn't deny that, either. But the interesting thing about the charm of technology is the popularization. Wakanda has indeed created a unique scientific and technological environment by relying on vibranium, but it is still the direction of human cognition in the direction of research. You can't always go in two different directions of mathematical research. You can't always deny the four fundamental forces. As long as these are well known, there will be no problem with reception. It just so happens that the Pendra family has a huge industry in the Marvel world, and there are a large number of researchers who can be deployed at any time, and it is not difficult to eat through Wakanda's technology. Spit out the magic potion drop. You have to say it obediently a few times when you wet the bed as a child. 3 drops down. Even Merlin is estimated to call God. 10 I can promise you that as soon as you live in a different place I will give up control of you and your people, which is a win-win. Surui sneered. Win-win? You come to someone else's house to rob someone else's things, seize someone else's possession, and ask others to cooperate with you, which is a win-win situation in the end. Anson spread out his hand. At least, you are not dead. In fact, I can do it more thoroughly, and this is your only chance. Unless you are willing to be controlled by me forever. No other way? Anson shook his head directly. Joke, vibranium to you is a waste. Look what you do with vibranium. Toilets, toothbrushes, clothing, accessories. God, it's just hard. Take Surui to the cell where Chaco and Kala are held, as well as a kind of royalty. Princess Ramonda walked through the cell and took her daughter's hand. Her eyes narrowed. I'll be fine. Don't worry. Suru then told them about Anson's conditions. As a prince, T'Challa naturally disagreed with the look and directly refused. But King Chaka was calm. Sir, according to what you said, I am afraid that the place we are going to will not be simple. Anson, the king has always had wise thinking, and indeed, the place you are going to is called What Alime? Where is the legend that the Dark Elves are? Suru blurted out. Yes. Anson was dressed in a black magic robe. So, what do you think? Will you really spare me and all my people? Chaka asked again. Of course, King Chaka. Not only that, but I will help you transport all your weapons and basic resources. T'Challa, you want us to deal with the so-called Dark Elves? Several people knew this very well in their hearts. Yes, deal? You don't have to be too afraid. After all, the Dark Elves are already very weak now. In fact, in an intelligence I know, their strength is at most a fleet. There won't be more. As for the extraordinary power, it is probably similar to the heart-shaped grass you have taken, and the level of technology may not even be as strong as you. On one side is to live in another place, and despite the presence of powerful enemies, they are free. On one side, there is a life of slavery. It is extremely sad that the people at the bottom do not even know that their top has been completely controlled. How to choose? Once in dispute with an unknown civilization, will it bring hope or darkness? T'Challa clenched the door with both hands. How do you know this? You should also be an earthling. Anson pointed to Hela on the side. Let me introduce you. This is the eldest princess of Asgard, the eldest daughter of Odin, as you know. By the way, I have seen the god King Odin. My king, are you sure they are useful? Hela was a little disgusted. Except for the older child, who seemed to have more power than a mortal in his body, everyone else seemed to be mortal. What about the Dark Elves? Almost every one of them has a power and speed that surpasses humans, and among them there are wizards. She couldn't see what the so-called Wakanda had compared to the Dark Elves. Perhaps, what bad idea is Anson fighting? Anson didn't answer her words and looked straight at the Chaka family. Accept or refuse? Do we have a choice? Suru smiled bitterly. Anson smiled and said, don't be frustrated. In fact, I will help you, saying that it is better for you to fight the Dark Elves than to say that I am with you. He just wanted some cannon fodder and a bridgehead built by humans on top of the 9 realms. The earth is too dangerous and some preparation is needed. At night, the whole family took heart-shaped grass in the presence of Anson. Novels, just go to Felu closing parenthesis. Well, after taking it, T'Challa still wanted to resist, but as a result, he was directly put down by Hela with a punch, and he did not dare to explode. So the long-imprisoned king of Chaka made a speech about conquering alien civilizations. Strangely, all the top tribal officials seem to agree with this decision. Even if there are disagreeing voices, they will dissipate in a short time. It is said that many people died unexpectedly. It took 1 month to prepare, and the delivery of weapons, resources, personnel, etc. was completed. How many people are there in the whole of Wakanda? The answer is 1 million. The more technologically advanced the region, the lower the fertility rate, which is perfectly illustrated in Wakanda. Since everyone has social welfare to support themselves in 720 jobs without hard work, and does not have to worry about their life expectancy and so on, then the fertility rate will be a problem. Dark Elf Dimension. When the Wakandas were awakened by the wizards, they learned that they had come to another place. Say yes to attack alien civilizations? How did they get here in an instant? Fortunately, Chaka calmed down for a while before nothing happened. On the other side of the passage, a huge defensive structure had been built early with vibranium. Anson, your mission is to quickly build a defensive fortress around this building, and when the Dark Elves are destroyed, this place is all yours. Chaka was silent for a moment. Sir, is what you said true? Anson bared a mouthful of white teeth. I have never deceived anyone I traded with. Rest assured, my people will help you. But you must guard this passage, otherwise you will not have a chance to go back. Turn around and go this side of the British World Passage. Pay attention to the prevention channel. If you don't follow the rules, you will blow them up. Let them try with the Dark Elves first. Will they be opponents? Hela sneered, a group of primitive people, compared to the Dark Elves. However, if they were all armed, the Dark Elves would still suffer. Pay attention to the scheduling of vibranium. Chapter 173. After being crippled by Odin, most of the Dark Elves basically wandered in the starry sky. One is that they are afraid that Odin will deal with them again. The second is to restore their strength. How much strength they have regained for so long, and how many new powers they have, is still unknown. It takes a close opponent to test them. Wakanda is suitable. Most weapons are developed by vibranium, which is not much weaker technologically, and is fought on the territory of the Dark Elves. Many weapons of mass destruction, the Dark Elves, cannot be struck. Even if it can, Wakanda should be able to cope too. Not to mention that with the help of wizards on the side, if you don't even touch the bottom of the Dark Elf, you deserve to be killed. Elise returns after dealing with the assets and networks left behind by vampires and werewolves. Brought a new message. So, this vampire named Deacon wants to become a blood god? If I'm not mistaken, it seems that you need pure-blooded vampires to become a blood god, right? Elise nodded. Yes, so far he has controlled this part of the people, and we have also found out that he seems to have discovered the location of the vampire ancestor. Vampire ancestor? Dracula? The piercing Grand Duke didn't know how powerful it would be. Drop intelligence. This time he came back with only 3 things. The first was the Dark Elf thing, which was very important, and the second was the vampire's liquidation. The third is to continue to hunt down the remaining scurry people on Earth. The first thing has been arranged, and then it is necessary to wait for the result, but the third thing needs to be done slowly. As for vampires, that's a bunch of rookie chickens. If it weren't for the fact that the high-ranking people on Mika's side were afraid of death and wanted to seek immortality through vampires, they would not be human opponents. There are too many weaknesses, too obvious. However, that Blood God and piercing Grand Duke Dracula should have some eyes. Come to Miss Carker. Wanda was eager to try. Pete was very calm, but those cold eyes said it all. Things need to be dealt with between them and Stark. Or rather, they thought that now their power could defeat Stark. Anson is happy to see this. Outside the villa, everyone appeared here. Quirrell was curious, and people that Miss Wanda can't deal with. Not to mention Wanda's ability to make people unlucky. It is said that even the young master cannot deal with it. Alone say Pietro. Super fast, you can even dodge most spells, and if the wizard does not cast an iron armor spell on himself, once he is approached, it will be a second move. Combined, Quirrell couldn't think of anyone else who could fight them. Anson waved his hand. Quirrell whispered a spell at the door of Stark's villa. Strong, blasting, boom. With a loud bang, at least half of the villa was shattered after the soot passed. Anson lifted his feet and walked inside, chose a chair and sat down. Wait. With Jarvis's intelligence, Stark should be on his way back by now. And not only him. At this moment, the shield, tri-curved wing building is also paying attention here. Hill, Chief, we'll let him come around? This time it doesn't look like we're going to recite the old days with Stark, and Stark still has a big role to play in our future plans. Fury gritted his teeth. Will he not know? The question is, what did he take to stop Anson? People are wizards, with all kinds of abilities that they can't understand and can't counterattack, and they are still haunted. Marjal Factor. Watch first. In the villa, everyone looked up at the sky at the same time, and Pietro had already clenched his fists, and a red dragon was engraved on his battle robe made of dragon skin magic robes. Wanda took his hand. Don't worry. Boom. The armor landed on the ground, revealing Stark's smelly fart company. Anson cocked his legs. What do you want to do? This is my home, and the bill will be sent to you later. Wanda, don't say this. We came this time to solve the matter between us. If you win our grudge, if we win. Pietro, you're going to die. Closing parenthesis. Stark was silent. There is no other way. A cloud of red energy had condensed in Wanda's hand, and Pietro was ready to run. Anson, you can't watch them become like this. Stark was in a hurry. He never underestimated the people around Anson. Although it is not known what Wanda and Pietro are capable of, being able to be favored by Anson shows the seriousness of civilization. But he didn't want to make a move. No one knows better than him what abilities the Warframe possesses. It can be said that before the Warframe came out, the weapons in the world were divided into 2 types. One was the Warframe and the other was other weapons. A powerful energy cannon can even penetrate a cruise ship. What about a person's body? Anson sat on his own. The energy mass in Wanda's hand was thrown forward. Shout! The sound of breaking the air appeared, and the frightened Stark quickly flew up to dodge. In the next second, Pietro had disappeared, and when he reappeared, he had jumped up from the side and grabbed one of Stark's legs. Pull hard, rip and pull. Rumble. Smashed into the ground. A cloud of red energy followed closely into it as if it was dead. By the time Wanda stopped, there was no other sound in the crater. Is he dead? Wanda was on guard. Buzz. 2 white eyes lit up in the big grey smoke. SHH. The light mass turned into a battle armor energy cannon directly struck towards the 2, saying that it was too late, and the iron armor spell on the dragon skin magic robe immediately condensed. Boom. Surprised. Stark in the Warframe was already a little confused, and according to Jarvis's calculations, these 2 blows of energy were already able to hit Wanda and them hard. Now it's actually blocked. Is it some kind of energy shield? Doesn't it mean that Anson's people are all mysterious side abilities? But the 2 would not give him time to think. Wanda slowly took out a wand and aimed it at Stark's suspended armor in the air and said, Deformation. Rush. The strange energy directly acts on the Stark armor, and I am afraid that in less than a millisecond, Stark has already fallen to the ground. Wang is good. Unbelievable looking. Pietro disappeared, and when he reappeared, his hand had grabbed Stark's neck and raised it high. In the other hand was a dagger made of vibranium. The eyes flashed coldly. Wanda was startled. Pietro. Don't. Pietro didn't look back. He had been waiting for this moment for a long time, so long that he was able to use his hatred for Stark to make his training self forget the pain. Anson suddenly raised his hand. A bald head dressed in a monk's robe appeared in the void. Yiling stubbornly thought of the reality gem that Anson hung on his chest. "Ah, what an interesting use, Master Anson." Anson stood up and saluted seriously. "Long time no see, Supreme Mage. I thought you wouldn't care about such a thing." "Yes, but he can't die yet, you know." Anson shrugged. "It's not my business with him." Chapter 174. Stark's face was already purple-red without oxygen, but he didn't struggle. Yi looked at Pietro. "Mr. Maximov, how about letting him down first?" Seeing that Pietro was silent, Yi looked at Wanda again, and the meaning was self-evident. Wanda sighed. Pietro grabbed Stark in front of his eyes. "It's not that I can't kill you, it's too easy to kill you. Remember how it feels today. One day you will experience it again." Syllable. "Throw it aside." Wanda put away her wand. "I've seen the Supreme Mage." "Hello, Master Wanda. It seems that you are studying well over there." After saying that, leave. Quirrell couldn't help but post. "Young Master, is she?" "Supreme Mage, about a dozen." Professor Dumbledore eyed up to a powerful look. "Well, it should be about the same, of course. This is to put aside the gem of time. Just count the degree of destruction." "Well, old Deng really can't get his hands on it." Quirrell was shocked. He thought that Dumbledore was strong enough, and then Anson's appearance made him think that Anson was the most powerful. But now just after arriving here, there was a wizard described by Professor Dumbledore as a measure unit. Who at home does a side flip. "Anson, the deal between me and you has been completed, and in the future, you will need 230 to work for me for another 27 years, and you will be free." After speaking, he looked at Stark, who was lying on the ground with a dead face. "Seems to have been hit." Flotation charm. A warframe flew up from the lower floor of the collapsed villa. Anson had a glowing feeling. "Well, with some kind of energy force field as a means of isolation, you think this will be able to resist the wizard's means?" "Mr. Stark, your brilliant brain seems to have been wasted. How about a deal between us?" Stark struggled to his feet and looked apologetically at Wanda before turning to Anson. "And, Quirrell in a magic robe. Oh, you will also make a deal with me with a wooden stick that threatens people all over the world?" "It's still a stinky fart." Anson didn't care. "Tell me about it. Maybe the great Stark will agree to your deal." "How about letting me collect your soul and brain when you die?" "I think I can use your soul to make more interesting Stark." "Ah, no, at that time, he should have been called a big." "If you don't have this qualification, I will definitely go to heaven." Poof. BBTC. Quirrell couldn't help but laugh. Even if he has just come to this world, the knowledge in the family is shared. "Heaven?" "Young Master, doesn't he know about heaven and being banished by the Odin God King?" "Going to heaven? It's not easy. It's better to go to hell and actually get there." "Mr. Quirrell, Muls are always limited in what they can see." "So they're Muls." Stark didn't know why he felt a strong sense of discrimination against the word Mul. "Enough. Even if I go to hell, my soul is not yours, and it is definitely not yours." "Huh? How to determine?" "Ha ha ha." Just about to leave, Pabo came with Fury and his party from S.H.I.E.L.D., and it seemed that the outside was still surrounded. "It's not good to learn." "God, Tony, are you all right?" His face was full of distress. And they did not dare to say anything to Anson. In Anson, all the common sense they think and the rules that should be followed do not exist. Aloof. Fury's one-eyed thing showed something called curiosity. "After the one appeared just now, it seems that you don't dare to continue to strike. It seems that you are not very powerful. So you came so many people just to scare me?" "I haven't asked you to take the scarer into Earth. It's the best option." Shrugging, the wand flicked towards the shield. Agent outside. The scarus flew in. Closing parenthesis immediately. 3 people flew over from the crowd, and there was an uproar among the surrounding agents, and the weapons in their hands were already aimed at Anson. As soon as Fury spoke, they dared to believe they could burst his head. Fury didn't say anything. He didn't know about this today. According to his cooperation with the leader of the Skuru people, Taris, there should be no Skurus talents in the team selected today. Suspicious. He thought of a lot at once. The 3 floated in the air. "Anson, Mr. Quirrell." "Young Master, teach me." Quirrell let out a chattering laugh and drew his wand. Dementor. Echo screams. The 3 of them simultaneously regained their own Skuru green skin, which was particularly conspicuous. 1 o'clock is less than time. Avada nibbles on a big melon. Quirrell finished everything and withdrew his wand. "Young Master, there is no valuable information. They have not contacted other Skuru people in the near future, but it is a pity that they did not bring the Spit True magic potion." "It's okay, just see one kill one." Everyone left, and the shield agents outside were like they were coming on an outing, and no one dared to stop them. At least not until they were ordered by Fury. Fury looked around the villa. "What a powerful attack, isn't it?" Stark rolled his eyes. "Don't say anything cool." On the contrary, he had a relaxed feeling. At least the matter between him and Wanda's 2 siblings was over. "Fury, you're not curious? Now that you've developed your armor against wizards, you should be aware of his dangers, and we can cooperate." "Cooperation?" Stark looked at him playfully. "It's not that I look down on you, You first clean up the affairs of the scurry people. Relative to Fury, he prefers to trust Anson, at least as far as the scurry people are extremely approving of him. God, people of different civilizations, races, and social structures would introduce another higher civilization into their own civilization. Did the brain witch? You Fury wouldn't have chosen this way if you had gone to elementary school, would you? What the? Can't resist. Funny is not. At least he didn't see any targeted measures from Fury, and now that the scurry people were clearly out of control, Fury still didn't know anything. Make a mess yourself. Deserve. Okay, you can leave, or I'll be charged for staying at my house. Fury pointed to a piece of ruin. You call this home? You're a billionaire. Left with a second skin face. Popo, are you sure you want to keep going like this? Popo, I have this ability, I have this responsibility, I can't watch those things happen, can I? Although I don't know what Anson wants to do, but wonder, they shouldn't have gone down this path. Jarvis, is today's data recorded? Yes sir, all have been recorded, but Anson's energy fluctuations are more powerful, and the models we built before seem to be no longer a match. Heck, it gets stronger every time we meet. In this case, when will his anti-Anson armor be made? Chapter 175. Anson just wanted to deal with Mika's side, but was suddenly called back by Spencer. What's wrong? Young master, we detected an unknown energy fluctuation at the passage, which is somewhat similar to the god domain fluctuation that appeared in Asgard. Hela took a closer look. Where is similar? This is the energy fluctuation that only operations on the Asgard god domain can exist. Still, there are some differences. Look here, this should be the energy fluctuation generated before the so-called convergence of the 9 realms, and when the convergence is really generated, the energy fluctuation will be more powerful than it is now. This means that the Dark Elves are coming. Did the Wakanda people on the other side find anything? Tilda? Spencer shook his head directly. Maybe they have not encountered the relationship of alien civilizations, they have not dared to explore the opposite planet, and there is nothing to discover at present. Thought about it. Young master, look at this. Projected another picture. There is a car outside the building going back and forth for a long time, and it is not difficult to see from the picture taken. One of them was holding a phaser that analyzed energy fluctuations. Jane Foster? Is this my stupid brother's girlfriend? Odin knew he would be angry. Hela teased. How long can a mortal live? How long does an Asgardian god live? As long as there are no accidents, god domain people can basically live 5,000 years old, especially their Odinson family, and ordinary god domain people are also thousands of years old. Even if humans can live, they are not as much as the Asgardians. Bring it in. Spencer immediately notified the security guards stationed outside, and not long after, the 3 people led by Jane were brought to Anson. Jane? They were even more confused. If the information they retrieved was correct, the place would have been in ruins a year ago. But in a year, such a new building was built, and it covered a large range. Even here they detected the same energy fluctuations that Thor had when he first appeared. Hela tickled her chin with her fingers, and Jane twisted away with some impatience. Jane, Wizard Anson, this is also your shield. We don't know this is your research base. Can you let us go? Shield. Anson set her eyes on the girl standing beside her with a very wowed figure. You are? Daisy, Louise. Hello Wizard Anson. Anson's eyebrows wrinkled, and he subconsciously said, have you ever gone bankrupt? Daisy shook her head directly. Of course not. Well, maybe the days of studying with Jane should be considered bankrupt. Why do you ask so? Nothing, just think you should go bankrupt. Daisy, as for the interns on her side, they were simply ignored. Quirrell, young master, there is a discovery. Oh? Who? Quirrell pointed to the intern who was ignored by Anson. He, in his memory, found the memory of what the young master said. He? The intern looked terrified, but the security guard on one side was firmly grasped and could not move. It seems to be understandable that whether it is Thor or Loki, both of them can make huge waves on the earth, and it is easy to understand that they will be targeted by Hydra. This time, Jane, who is the first to contact and discover Thor, and even become his girlfriend, is very worthy of placing a person next to him. Take it down and deal with it. No, Jane, Daisy, save me. The two looked confused. Jane asked, what Hydra are you talking about? The Hydra we know. Wasn't it already crushed during you see it? Anson paused. Okay Dr. Jane, things here are not something you can handle, and as soon as he was halfway through the words, Anson did not continue. Because, there are people out there again. Boom with a bang. In the fenced park, there is an extra figure, not who Thor is. Everyone watched Anson walk to the window and follow him, and Jane excitedly shouted, Thor, it's me, I'm here. Anson was a little reluctant to see him appear. Hydra has been watching here. So, these arrangements he made have already entered Odin's eyes? Thor looked at Anson in a complicated way, and did not have time to explain the situation to Jane. Anson, you shouldn't pay attention here. The 9 realms convergence is not something you can deal with. Moreover, ether particles are something that the Dark Elves must take back, and if they know that it is with you, they will definitely come to you when the time comes. Reach out to Anson. Give an Infinity Stone. Don't even think about it. I think it's because you didn't understand the situation, Thor. As far as I know, There seem to be many places in the 9 realms that are being attacked by marauders right now, and you don't help them. What are you doing here? I don't want to see Midgard go into a state of war, and trust me, you won't be the Dark Elves' opponents. Anson still didn't give him the reality gem. Outside, Daisy patted her big guy with palpitations. Good guy, it's so scary. If you hadn't come, I thought we would have been imprisoned by him. Jane didn't care much. Is the 9 realms really as chaotic as he says? Thor sighed and turned to look at the huge building. He could feel that the woman standing beside Anson seemed to be somewhat similar to him, and that kind of energy fluctuation was clearly something that only God Domain had. It's okay, you can rest assured with me. Go, I haven't seen you for a long time. Above, closing parenthesis, Hela hugged and cooed. Just let them go like this? How else? I'm sure Hayidam is staring at us right now. Hayidama? Hela also had to frown. His eyes were too annoying, and there were few places in the universe that could block his gaze. Go. After leading people into the passage, the spell that Anson had originally placed inside was still untouched, indicating that the people of Wakanda did not want to return. Out of the passage was a desolate earth, black silt and sand lying on the ground. In the dim environment, a huge city had already been built at the entrance of the passage. Outside, countless weapon units have been built, and various spells placed here by wizards are working. Laboratory. Suruit pointed to the image transmitted back by their satellite. 3 days ago, we detected that some bright spots in outer space were rapidly traveling to our planet, according to the light and shadow trajectory and energy analysis. We have reason to suspect that this is an interstellar spacecraft that can carry out hyperspace voyages. This may be what you mean by the Dark Elves. It's really coming. How long will it take for them to get here? A week. What are your plans, T'Challa? At the moment they should not be able to find this place. They are not aware of our existence, and we think it is necessary to rely on this condition to catch the other party by surprise.